Hello everyone. Welcome to Dead Time Stories. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's story. The road narrowed as the traveler walked, its edges eaten by weeds and shadows. He'd been walking since early morning, his pack heavy with books, clothes, and a tin flask of water that was nearly empty. His boots were scuffed, dust clinging to the leather, and each step rang in his bones. By late evening, the sun had drained away into streaks of red and gray. A chill moved across the air. He pulled his coat tighter and glanced at the town ahead. It was small, so small it seemed surprised by its own existence. A scattering of houses slouched against the horizon, chimneys like crooked teeth. A single shop front stood shuttered, its window blinds sagging. A sign swung loosely on chains, the paint long gone. He paused in the town square. It was silent, except for the whisper of dry leaves scraping across the cracked pavement. A man leaned against the rusted shell of a pickup truck, a cigarette ember glowing faintly between his fingers. "Evening," the traveler said, lifting a hand. The man didn't return the greeting. He just squinted through the smoke and shook his head slowly, as if warning the stranger of something without words. "Is there an inn nearby?" the traveler asked. "A room, a bed, anything." The man spat into the dirt. "No inn. Not here. Best you keep walking." His voice was rough, hoarse like gravel. "Walking where?" "There's nothing for miles." The man's eyes flickered toward the edge of town. "Then keep to the road. Don't go looking elsewhere." The traveler frowned. His legs ached, and the dark was coming fast. He shifted his pack and nodded his thanks, but the man had already turned away, tossing the cigarette into the dust. The traveler kept walking. Past the last working streetlight, its glow pale and sickly, buzzing like a trapped wasp, he saw it, a house set back among the trees, just visible in the violet dusk. Its outline leaned against the horizon like a figure too long abandoned. The windows, dark and watchful, seemed to regard him. The house waited. And when he touched the gate, it gave way beneath his hand with a moan, as if it had been expecting him. The porch groaned under his weight, its boards soft from rain and neglect. A lone moth battered itself against the frame of the door, wings powdery, body brittle. The traveler touched the knob. It turned with no resistance, no lock, no scrape of rusted metal. Almost too smooth, as if the house had been waiting for this exact moment. Inside, the air was damp and cool. The first breath he drew carried the scent of dust, mold, and something metallic, like old coins pressed into the earth. He closed the door gently behind him, the click echoing faintly through the hollow rooms. The parlor stretched wide, pale wallpaper peeling down in strips like old skin. Heavy furniture stood beneath yellowing sheets, the shapes stiff and unnatural in the dim. A rocking chair leaned slightly forward, poised on the edge of movement. A small table held a teacup, its porcelain cracked but upright, as if someone had set it down only moments before. He muttered to himself. "Empty. Just empty." His own voice startled him, thin against the silence. He adjusted his pack, meaning to lay it near the hearth, but paused. He thought he'd heard something, just the faintest shift above, like weight settling on a board. "Old house," he whispered. "That's all." But his ears strained for more, and the silence after was worse than the sound. He lit a small lantern from his pack, its glow pushing shadows back only a few feet. In the yellow light, the staircase rose crookedly, banister warped, steps sagging under their own memory. He could swear the second step bore a darker stain, as though years ago something had been spilled there and seeped deep into the wood. The traveler debated. The downstairs was enough, surely. He could unroll his blanket in the parlor, let the lantern burn low, and be gone at first light. But his gaze drifted upward, drawn unwillingly toward the landing where the darkness pooled thickest. Another creak, soft, deliberate. Not settling. Not the wind. Footsteps. He froze, breath caught. The house was not empty. And somewhere above, something was waiting for him to move. The traveler kept his hand tight around the lantern's handle, the metal warm against his skin. He moved slowly, each step across the parlor sounding too loud, too sharp, like an intrusion. His eyes darted to the staircase again. He thought he could see the faintest motion in the gloom above, a suggestion of shifting shadow, or perhaps just his weary imagination. He whispered, "Just wood. Just an old house." His voice trembled despite the words. He set his pack near the fireplace, though the hearth was choked with ash so old it had hardened into a gray crust. The iron grate sagged in its frame. A single log collapsed into itself like a broken limb. No fire would come from that place. The traveler unrolled his blanket and placed the lantern beside it, the circle of light revealing more of the room. Dust shimmered like drifting snow in the glow. Against the far wall, the outline of a grandfather clock loomed beneath a sheet. The cloth clung close to its face, and though the clock was surely long dead, he could almost imagine it ticking in the silence. Then he noticed the teacup. He could have sworn it had been nearer the center of the table when he entered. Now it rested closer to the edge, the cracked porcelain lip catching the light. His mouth dried. He stepped forward, touching the rim with a tentative finger. Cold. No warmth lingered. He sat back on the blanket, drawing his knees close, telling himself to ignore the tricks of dim light. He was a stranger, tired and unwelcome, imagining stories in a place that had none. Yet the house disagreed. From upstairs came another creak, then a pause, then another. This time he was certain. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Crossing from one end of the room above to the other. Then silence again, long and absolute. The traveler forced himself to speak, his voice rising like a challenge. "Hello? Is someone here?" The words echoed, stretching into corners unseen. No answer came. Only the faint, steady rhythm of his own pulse thudding in his ears. And then, so quiet he almost missed it, a reply, whispered through the boards overhead. "Yes." The word hung in the air like a thread of smoke. "Yes." The traveler's skin prickled, every hair rising as if the house itself had exhaled into his ear. He gripped the lantern tighter, the glass rattling faintly against its frame. His first thought was that someone had broken in before him, some drifter or desperate soul. But the voice had been too close, too intimate, seeping through the wood as if the house itself had spoken. He stood slowly, his knees stiff, eyes locked on the staircase. The lantern's glow barely touched the first few steps, the rest vanishing into shadow. "I don't mean harm," he said, his voice unsteady. "I just need a place to rest for the night." No reply. Only silence, deep and pressing. The traveler took one step forward, then stopped. His legs didn't want to move. His body knew better than his mind. Instead, he turned back toward his blanket and lowered himself down, determined to ignore the creaks, the whispers, the shifting shadows. Dawn wasn't far. He could endure until then. But the house did not want him to rest. The rocking chair moved. Just slightly. A slow tilt backward, a whisper of wood on wood. His breath caught. He stared at it, heart pounding, but the chair stilled as if mocking his nerves. Dust stirred in the air. The teacup slid half an inch closer to the edge of the table, though nothing had touched it. He watched in disbelief as it trembled, shivered, then stopped. "No," he muttered, shaking his head. "I'm tired. That's all." The lantern's flame flickered, shrinking low, then flaring again. In that brief stutter of light, he saw something at the base of the staircase, a shape, crouched low, too dark to belong to the play of shadows. He blinked. It was gone. His throat felt tight. He forced himself to breathe, forced himself to believe he was imagining it. Yet when he looked again, he thought he saw faint indentations in the dust at the bottom of the stairs. Like footprints. Bare. Small. And then, from upstairs again, the same voice, softer now, almost playful. "Come up!" The traveler's pulse throbbed in his temples. That whisper, soft, coaxing, impossible, curled through the silence like a lure. "Come up." He stared at the staircase, the lantern trembling in his grip. His mind shouted to stay put, to wait for morning, to leave the house to whatever dwelled in its ribs. But his body betrayed him. He rose, knees weak, and drifted toward the first step. It groaned under his boot, a long sigh of wood waking after years of rest. Dust shook loose from the banister. He paused, lantern lifted, peering into the dark above. Nothing. Just a stretch of landing swallowed in shadow. He swallowed hard and muttered, "Just an old house. That's all." His own voice sounded thin, foolish. The second step sagged lower, and he noticed the dark stain again. Lantern light revealed its edges, deep, uneven, soaked into the grain long ago. His boot hovered over it before settling down. A faint chill seeped upward, as if the wood itself remembered something it wanted him to feel. He climbed slowly, each step louder than the last. The house seemed to hush around him, holding its breath. Behind him, the parlor faded into shadow, the rocking chair still, the teacup balanced at the edge of its table. Ahead, the landing stretched like a throat swallowing him whole. Halfway up, he froze. The lantern caught movement above, just a flicker, like the retreat of a shadow. He thought he heard the faintest laugh, quick and dry, as though a child had stifled it behind their hands. "Who's there?" he demanded, forcing strength into his voice. No answer. The steps groaned beneath him until at last he reached the top. The hallway stretched narrow and long, lined with closed doors on either side. Wallpaper here had peeled in strips, exposing dark wood beneath, and the air was colder, carrying a faint sourness, like spoiled milk. The lantern flame jumped again, casting long, jerking shadows across the walls. Behind him, down in the parlor, something crashed, the sharp shatter of porcelain against wood. The teacup. And in that moment, before he could even turn, one of the doors at the far end of the hall creaked open just an inch. A sliver of darkness beckoned. The door at the far end lingered in his vision, that slim line of black cutting through the gloom. But the traveler did not go to it, not yet. His hand tightened on the lantern, the light trembling across the warped wallpaper. Each door along the hallway seemed to lean toward him, shut but not silent, as if listening. He stepped carefully, boots whispering over warped boards. The air smelled stronger here, a sickly sweet rot that clung to his tongue. He pressed his ear to the first door on the left. For a moment, nothing. Then, faintly, a sound like fabric shifting, as though someone turned over in bed. He jerked back, pulse racing, staring at the knob. It did not turn, though he swore he saw the faintest quiver in the metal, like breath fogging it. On the opposite side, another door loomed. He listened. A steady drip echoed within, rhythmic, slow. Water, perhaps. But he smelled iron, sharp and unmistakable, and imagined the drip was thick, dark, and warm. He moved on, his breath shallow, each step a negotiation between courage and fear. Another door. He pressed his ear. Silence. Just as he was about to step away, something tapped on the other side. 1, 2, 3. Knuckles against wood. He stumbled back, the lantern swinging wildly. The hallway warped with shadows, doors swelling taller, their surfaces shivering with light. Then the laugh came again, high, sharp, like a child caught in mischief. It darted along the corridor, impossible to pin down. He spun, lantern raised, but the sound slipped behind him, then above, then everywhere at once. The traveler's throat tightened. "Show yourself!" he shouted. His voice cracked, swallowed by the hall. Silence returned. Heavy. Watching. At the far end, the cracked open door waited. Only now it seemed wider, though he had not seen it move. The dark within pulsed faintly, a blackness deeper than the shadows of the hall. The traveler's feet carried him forward despite his trembling hands. The closer he drew, the colder the air became, as though the house itself breathed out through the gap. He reached the door. His fingers hovered over the wood. And from inside, so close it could have been against his ear, a child's voice whispered, "Don't open it." The traveler's hand froze on the door. That whisper, small, urgent, still clung to the air. "Don't open it." His pulse hammered in his ears. "Who's there?" he asked, his voice tight. No answer. Just the cold seeping from the crack, steady and deliberate, as though the room beyond exhaled a different kind of air. He swallowed hard, tried again. "Are you a child?" Silence, then the faintest whimper, muffled as if from a throat pressed against wood. "Please, don't." The traveler's skin prickled. He glanced back down the hallway, expecting movement, but the shadows only leaned closer, every door seeming to tilt toward him. The lantern light shivered, and for a heartbeat he thought he saw figures pressing against the wallpaper. Faded outlines of faces where the paper had peeled, mouths open but voiceless. He turned back to the door. His breath clouded before him, though no frost touched the wood. The crack had widened again, imperceptibly, as though the house encouraged him to peer inside. His hand trembled on the knob. "If you don't want me to open it, then what's inside?" A long pause. Then the voice again, this time lower, ragged. "It's still hungry." The traveler stumbled back, the words clawing at his chest. His lantern swung wide, light flashing across the hall. For an instant, every other door shuddered in its frame, hinges groaning, as if something inside strained to get out. He steadied himself against the wall, chest heaving. "This isn't real," he muttered, though the phrase felt thin, brittle. "It isn't real." The whisper grew again, closer now, as if the voice were pressed right against the crack. "Go back. Leave before it wakes." The traveler staggered a step away. His instincts screamed to flee, to run down the staircase, past the broken teacup, out the door into the night. But another part of him, colder and heavier, rooted him in place. Curiosity. The door loomed. The black within seemed to throb. And though the voice begged, he raised his hand to the knob again. His fingers closed on the knob. Cold bit into his skin, sharper than the night air outside. For a moment, he thought he felt it pulse, like something alive beneath the brass. The voice whispered again, "Don't," but he pushed anyway. The door opened with a long, aching creak. Lantern light spilled inside, clawing at a small bedroom cloaked in dust. The wallpaper was a faded blue, patterned with stars, though age had eaten half of them away. A narrow bed stood against the wall, its blanket gray with years, the pillow sunken deep. A wooden horse leaned in the corner, its paint flaked, one eye rubbed away to bare wood. But it was the footprints that caught him. Small, bare, stamped into the dust across the floor. They led from the bed to the center of the room, and then stopped. No return path, no exit. Just stopped. The traveler's throat tightened. He crouched, lantern low, tracing the faint impressions. The dust stirred slightly, though he hadn't touched it. As if the prints were being pressed fresh again. He straightened quickly, heart racing. "Who's here?" For a moment, nothing. Then the blanket on the bed shifted, a faint ripple as though something small turned beneath it. The traveler stepped back, lantern raised. His shadow lunged across the walls. "Show yourself." The blanket stilled. He moved closer despite every nerve screaming against it. With one trembling hand, he reached for the blanket's edge. His fingers brushed the fabric, cold, damp with something that clung to his skin. He yanked it back. Nothing. Just a hollow pillow and sagging mattress. And yet, he felt the weight of eyes on him, close, impossibly close. The lantern flickered, the flame shrinking. In that dim stutter of light, he caught a glimpse in the dresser mirror, not his own reflection, but a child standing behind him. Small. Pale. Its head tilted too far to the side. He spun around. The room was empty. The mirror, however, still showed the child. And this time, it was smiling. The traveler's breath fogged the mirror though he stood several feet away. His own reflection was gone. Only the child stared back at him, thin, pale, hair hanging in uneven clumps across its forehead. Its head tilted farther, vertebrae stretching at an angle no living neck could bear. He whispered, "What are you?" The child's lips moved in the mirror, but no sound came. Its smile widened, teeth small and gray, as though they'd been left in the earth too long. The traveler stepped closer, lantern trembling. "Do you live here?" This time the voice came, not from the mirror, but from just behind his ear. High, sing-song, impossible to place. "We all do." He whirled around. The room was empty. But the footprints in the dust had multiplied, circling around him, pressing fresh with each heartbeat. The mirror child giggled silently, shoulders shaking. Then, as though pushed from behind, its hand lifted and pressed flat against the inside of the glass. Small, bare, smudged with dust. The traveler's own hand twitched upward, unbidden, until it hovered inches from the surface. The glass misted where the child's palm rested. "Don't," he muttered to himself. But his fingers stretched closer. When he touched the mirror, the surface rippled, not solid but soft, like cold water. His skin sank half an inch before he jerked back with a cry. The glass snapped firm again, his reflection returning at last. Except it wasn't quite his reflection. His mirrored self stood in the same place, lantern in hand, but its eyes were wrong, too dark, too wide. And behind it, the child still lingered, grinning at the glass version of him. The traveler stumbled back, nearly dropping the lantern. Its light shook across the walls. He turned toward the door, desperate to leave, but it slammed shut with a thunderous crack. Dust rained from the ceiling. From within the mirror, his darker self leaned forward, pressing one palm to the inside of the glass. Its mouth moved in perfect silence, but he read the words clear. "Stay with us." The traveler's breath came shallow, ragged. The door behind him rattled once, then held shut, as though the house itself barred his escape. He pressed his shoulder against it, but it would not budge. The knob turned freely in his hand, useless, like a toy. His lantern flame flared suddenly, casting a sharp light across the mirror. His reflection smiled. Not a faint curl of lips, but a full, deliberate grin, stretching too wide across his face. The mirrored version lifted its lantern in the same rhythm, but the glow on that side was red, pulsing like an ember. The child still clung to the reflection side, its head tilted, hands slipping into the shadow version's grip. The pair stood together, united. The traveler whispered, "No, no, that's not me." The reflection's lips moved, but this time the sound bled through, his own voice, deeper, wet around the edges. "It is. You've always belonged here." The mirror surface rippled again. A low hum filled the room, vibrating in the boards, the bed frame, even in his ribs. The reflection pressed its palm harder against the glass. The child did the same. The traveler staggered back as the mirror bulged outward, just slightly, as if something behind it pushed to break through. The air grew colder, heavy, each breath cutting like ice. Then the glass caught his hand. He hadn't raised it. He swore he hadn't. Yet his fingertips grazed the surface again, and this time, it clung, sticky, unyielding, like tar that refused to let go. He yanked, but the mirror held him fast. The reflection's grin widened further, the skin at its cheeks tearing faintly, black lines splitting open. Its other hand reached, curling into a claw, pressing from the other side. The child laughed silently, head bobbing, eyes rolled back. "Let me go!" the traveler shouted, tugging with all his strength. His lantern swung, light whipping across the room in frantic arcs. The grip loosened at last. He fell backward, hand free, the surface snapping firm again. The lantern clattered against the bed frame, flames sputtering dangerously before righting itself. In the mirror, his reflection still smiled. But now its hand bore a faint smear of blood. His blood. And the child, still clutching its hand, leaned forward and whispered a single word he could almost hear. "Soon." The traveler staggered back, cradling his bleeding hand. Thin red lines crossed his palm where the glass had clung, shallow but burning, as if the wound itself remembered being touched by something not of this world. He fumbled for his pack, gone, left downstairs. All he had was the lantern, the dim flame jittering in the stale air. The mirror remained still, his reflection watching with patient hunger. The child pressed closer to its side, grinning wide enough to split its cheeks. The pair looked almost satisfied. The traveler lunged for the door. This time, when he twisted the knob, it gave. The wood shuddered, resisting, but with a violent shove of his shoulder, it burst open. He stumbled into a hallway, the slam behind him echoing like a gunshot. The corridor had changed. The wallpaper, once peeling in strips, now writhed faintly, as if damp with something alive beneath its surface. The doors along the wall stood ajar, though he knew he had seen them closed before. Each one breathed a faint draft, carrying smells: sour milk, rusted iron, damp soil. The scents mingled into something foul and familiar. He lifted the lantern higher. Shadows darted across the floor, skittering too fast to follow. Once, twice, he thought he saw small bare feet vanish into a doorway just ahead. The traveler called out, his voice hoarse. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The only reply was a slow, deliberate knock. From every door at once. 1, 2, 3. His chest tightened. He stumbled backward, lantern shaking, until his spine struck the banister at the top of the stairs. He glanced down. The parlor below waited in darkness, his blankets sprawled beside the hearth, the shattered teacup glinting faintly. The rocking chair moved. Back and forth, though no one sat in it. The knocks grew louder. Each door rattled in its frame, hinges squealing. Dust rained from the ceiling. He pressed his back to the wall, lantern raised, heart hammering. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence. All the doors eased shut in unison. Click, click, click. The traveler's breath rasped. He turned toward the staircase, desperate to flee into the night, and froze. At the bottom of the stairs, a figure waited. Small, pale, head tilted too far. It lifted one finger to its lips. Sure. The traveler's throat tightened. The figure at the foot of the stairs did not move, yet its pale face caught what little lantern light reached, gleaming faintly like bone. The head remained tilted, chin nearly brushing its shoulder, the grin fixed and wide. It raised its hand again, 2 fingers now, and beckoned. "No," the traveler whispered, his voice breaking. "Stay there. Don't come up." The figure obeyed. For one long moment it remained still. Then, slowly, its foot lifted and pressed onto the first step. The board groaned. The traveler's legs locked. He lifted the lantern higher, its glow throwing wild shadows up the walls. "Stop!" The figure did not stop. Step by step it climbed, bare feet soundless except for the creak of ancient wood. Its hands dragged along the banister as it rose, pale fingers trailing. With each step the tilt of its head grew sharper, as though its neck might snap entirely, but never did. The traveler retreated backward, deeper into the hallway. His boots scuffed the boards, his lantern flamed, trembling wildly. He considered bolting into one of the closed rooms, but he remembered the mirror, the footprints, the way the house seemed to shift when it wanted him cornered. "Stay back!" He tried again, louder, firmer. His free hand closed into a fist, though it trembled. Halfway up the staircase now. The figure's grin stretched wider, impossible, tearing faint lines at the corners of its mouth. Something wet glistened there. "God!" He raised the lantern as if it were a weapon. "If you come closer, I'll—" But his threat died. Because from behind him, one of the doors eased open without a sound. Cold air spilled across his back. And from the darkness inside came the whisper of many voices, layered and low, chanting one word in unison. "Stay." The traveler whirled, caught between the pale figure climbing from below and the unseen mouths calling from the room behind. His lantern flame guttered, weak and small, as though the house itself leaned in to smother it. The figure took another step. Then another. It would reach him soon. The traveler's chest heaved. The lantern shook so violently in his grip that its flames sputtered low, stretching shadows across the walls like clawed hands. He glanced over his shoulder at the open door, darkness inside, voices still hissing "Stay, stay, stay," then back down the stairs. The figure had reached the final step. It stood now at the landing, level with him. Up close it was smaller than he'd expected, no taller than a child of 8 or 9. Its skin was chalk white, veins faintly visible beneath. Its eyes. There were no pupils, only pale gray orbs that caught the lantern light and held it. The grin split wider, stretching far too long across its cheeks. The traveler stumbled back, his spine striking the wall. "Stay away from me." The figure cocked its head farther, the bones in its neck cracking like dry twigs. It took a single step forward, bare foot pressing into the dust. The floorboard groaned under a weight that felt heavier than the small frame should allow. "Don't," he whispered, though it came out like a plea more than a command. The figure raised its hand and pointed directly at him. Then it opened its mouth. The grin stretched, the jaw widening far too much, and the sound that poured out was not a voice but a long, hollow wail, like wind screaming through broken glass. The lantern flame guttered nearly to nothing. The traveler cried out, swinging the lantern in a wild arc. Its glass struck the wall with a crack, spilling light across the hall. The figure recoiled slightly, the wail cutting short. Its grin snapped shut, lips pressed tight as though holding something inside. Taking his chance, the traveler lunged past it, shoulders slamming into its cold body. For a split second he felt the texture of its skin, not flesh, not fabric, but something like wet paper. It gave under his weight, crumpling, yet sprang back as he stumbled into the stairwell. The figure turned sharply, limbs jerking, that grin reappearing with fresh violence. The traveler bolted down the steps, lantern raised high, heart hammering. The parlor yawned below, the broken teacup shards glinting. He hit the bottom step hard, stumbling, and froze. The rocking chair was no longer empty. Something sat in it. The traveler froze at the foot of the stairs, every nerve burning with the instinct to turn and flee. But his legs locked. His lantern swung in his trembling hand, casting uneven light across the parlor. The rocking chair moved gently, back and forth, though there was no hand to push it. No breeze stirred the air. Something sat within its folds of shadow. He could not see it clearly, just the vague impression of a body, long and thin, shoulders too narrow, head lolling forward. Its shape shifted with each sway of the chair, as if the light itself refused to settle on it. The traveler licked his dry lips. Who are you?" The chair creaked in answer. The figure stirred, lifting its head. Still, its face remained hidden, swallowed by the dark. But the sound that came with the motion froze his blood, the faint rattle of breath dragging through a hollow throat. He raised the lantern higher, willing the flame to stretch farther. For a brief instant, it caught the edges of its hand. Pale, long-fingered, nails cracked and blackened as though they had clawed at wood for years. The hand rested on the arm of the chair, twitching faintly as if remembering movement. The traveler's chest tightened. His instinct screamed, "Don't shine the light any closer. Don't see its face." But curiosity was a hook too deep to tear free. He took a step forward. The floor groaned beneath him. The chair stopped rocking. The silence was unbearable. The figure did not breathe, did not stir, only sat perfectly still, waiting. The traveler dared another step, then another. His lantern flame wavered, threatening to die with every breath he took. At last he stood before the chair. Slowly, carefully, he leaned down, raising the lantern to see the face within. The shadows thinned. A mouth. Wide, black, stretching ear to ear. No lips, no teeth. Only a cavern. From within, the faintest whisper seeped out, the same word he had heard upstairs, layered with many voices, old and young alike. "Stay!" The traveler staggered back with a cry. The chair lurched forward as if shoved from behind, scraping violently across the floorboards. Dust exploded into the air. And when it rocked back again, the figure was gone. The traveler's breath tore from him in quick, panicked bursts. The chair rocked violently once, twice, then stilled. Empty. Dust swirled in the lamplight like restless ash. He turned in circles, lantern held high. "Where are you?" His own voice quavered, swallowed immediately by the house. No reply. Then the walls sighed. It began as a low groan, with stretching under a weight too great to bear. The floorboards trembled beneath his boots, plaster cracking above. He staggered, grabbing at the mantel for balance. The house shuddered again, deeper this time, the sound of timbers bowing and nails tearing from wood. The wallpaper peeled faster, curling and lifting as though fingers tugged from beneath. The seams split wide, exposing not bare wood but a dark, pulsing surface, flesh-like, damp, throbbing faintly in the light. The traveler gagged. No! No, no! The hearth behind him shuddered. Ash spilled out, thick and wet, reeking of iron. Within it, something small and pale writhed before sinking back into the gray sludge. The teacup shards twitched on the floor, sliding across the boards as though pulled by unseen strings. They formed a neat circle around his boots, porcelain teeth ready to bite. The lantern sputtered. He shook it desperately, but the flame only dimmed further, smothered by the air thickening around him. The shadows grew taller, stretching from the corners, bending toward him like hungry limbs. Then came the voices. Not whispers now, but a low chorus from every wall, every seam of the house. Hundreds of throats at once, murmuring, moaning, hissing the same single word over and over. Stay. 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 The sound pressed into his skull, rattling his teeth, vibrating his ribs. He clapped his free hand over his ears, but it made no difference. The voices came from inside him now, leaking into his blood. The lantern's flame snuffed out. Darkness swallowed the parlor. And in that dark, something cold and damp slid across his ankle. The traveler froze. The sensation across his ankle was slick, deliberate, not the skitter of an insect, not the brush of fabric. Something alive. Something that lingered. He swallowed a cry, clamping his teeth shut, though his breath rasped too loud in the dark. His fingers scrambled for the lantern, shaking it, willing the flame to return. Nothing. Only the hollow rattle of glass. The thing moved again, sliding higher. Cold spread across his shin. It coiled like a rope of wet muscle, tightening just enough for him to feel the promise of strength. Let go, he whispered, his voice cracking. The voices in the walls hushed all at once. Silence pressed heavy, waiting. Then, closer now, almost brushing his ear, a child's voice hissed. Don't move! His chest heaved, panic clawing at his ribs. Against every instinct, he obeyed. He stood still, sweat chilling his skin, while the thing tightened around his leg. The texture was wrong, slick but rough in patches, like skin flayed and healed too many times. Another length of it brushed across his other boot, sliding forward, seeking. He couldn't hold still. With a hoarse shout, he kicked violently. The grip snapped loose, wetness smearing across his trousers. He stumbled back, striking the mantel hard enough to rattle his teeth. The dark writhed. He could hear it now, the thing dragging across the floorboards, heavy, deliberate. The boards moaned under its weight, groaning closer with each slither. His shaking hand struck the lantern again, desperate. This time, against all reason, the flame flared, weak, sputtering, but alive. Light spilled across the floor. What coiled there was not a rope, not a snake. It was an arm. Long, gray, jointed wrong. Fingers too many, bent at strange angles, nails splitting the wood as it crawled toward him. The limbs stretched back into the darkness, vanishing into the seams of the wall itself, as if the house had reached out to touch him. The traveler screamed, swinging the lantern down. Glass shattered, fire spilling across the boards. The arm recoiled, twitching violently before snapping back into the wall. The flames sputtered, licking across the floor, smoke choking the air. And above the crackle of fire, the house moaned in fury. The flames caught fast, licking greedily across the warped boards. Smoke thickened, curling into the traveler's lungs until he coughed and staggered. For one fleeting instant, hope sparked in him. Perhaps the blaze would force the house to yield, open its doors, drive whatever lived within out into the night. But the house had other plans. The fire faltered. Not from lack of fuel. There was plenty of old, dry timber to consume, but as though invisible hands pressed it flat. The flames bent low, curling in on themselves, sputtering like candles in a storm. Within seconds, the glow thinned to embers. Then even the embers faded, leaving only the acrid scent of smoke and the faint scorch marks across the floor. The traveler clutched the broken lantern's frame, jagged glass cutting into his palm. "No," he whispered, voice hoarse. "That's not possible." From the walls came a sound like breath being drawn in, a long, rattling inhale, as though the house itself had swallowed the fire whole. The parlor returned to darkness, but not silence. Above him, the ceiling groaned. Footsteps echoed again, slow, measured, crossing from one corner to another. Then more joined, heavier, quicker, until the air pulsed with countless feet pacing overhead. The house thrummed with life, its timbers trembling. The traveler stumbled toward the front door. He threw his shoulder against it once, twice, a third time. The wood didn't budge. The knob turned freely, spinning in circles as if mocking him. "Let me out!" His fists pounded, the sound swallowed before it could echo. Behind him, the rocking chair creaked once more. He turned, pulse hammering. It rocked gently, empty, though the dust disturbed around it told another story. Then came the knock. Not from the chair. Not from the doors above. From inside the walls. 3 hollow thuds, deep and wet, traveling around him like something crawling unseen. One to his left. One behind. One just inches from where his hand pressed the locked door. The traveler drew back, trembling, realizing the truth he had tried not to name. The house was alive, and it had noticed him. The traveler pressed his back to the front door, chest heaving. The wood thudded once more behind his shoulder, as though something inside it had knocked back. He tore himself away, stumbling into the parlor's center, turning in frantic circles with the broken lantern frame clutched like a weapon. Every corner whispered. Every seam of the wall seemed to flex, bulging slightly, like lungs filling and emptying. He had to find another way. His eyes darted to the far wall, where a sagging rug bunched awkwardly against the boards. The pattern was faded, the fabric stiff with dust. Something about the lump beneath it drew him forward. He yanked the rug aside. Beneath it, half hidden in grime, was a small square door set flush with the floor. Iron rings served as handles, red with rust. A cellar. The traveler froze, torn between dread and desperation. Whatever lived in the walls might be waiting below. But above him the footsteps had grown louder, faster, as though dozens now rushed from one room to another. The ceiling groaned with their weight. A crash erupted down the hall, one of the upstairs doors slamming open. Another followed. Then another. Soon the entire house shook with doors battering against their frames, opening and shutting without rhythm, like fists pounding from within. He had no choice. He hooked his fingers through the rusted rings and heaved. The trapdoor lifted with a shriek of hinges. A gust of air surged up from the dark below, damp, sour, laced with something faintly metallic. It smelled like soil and rot, and beneath that, the unmistakable stench of decay. The traveler gagged, pressing a sleeve to his mouth. Still, he swung the door wide. A narrow stairwell dropped into darkness, boards slick with damp. The air pulsed faintly, as though the earth beneath the house breathed. Behind him, the rocking chair tipped forward and crashed onto its side. The sound jolted him into motion. He clutched the broken lantern frame tighter, muttered a curse, and set one boot on the top step. It groaned, bending beneath his weight. Above, the footsteps stilled. The house was listening. The first step bowed beneath his boot, damp with groaning like a voice caught in its throat. The traveler froze, knuckles white around the broken lantern frame. The air seeping up from the cellar clung to his skin, thick as breath. He shifted his weight carefully onto the second step. The boards wept moisture underfoot, slick enough to send him sliding if he wasn't careful. The smell worsened, earth long undisturbed, sour milk, and beneath it the copper tang of blood. He muttered through clenched teeth. Just a basement. Just a place for storage. The house disagreed. Something moved in the dark below. Slow, dragging, wet. The sound of flesh pulled across stone. The traveler's breath caught. He lifted the broken lantern frame higher, as if its empty glass could shield him. His hand trembled. From above, the parlor door slammed shut with violent force. He flinched, nearly losing his footing. Dust rained down around him, the stairwell trembling as though the entire house leaned closer. "Not real," he whispered, though the phrase felt more fragile each time he said it. "Not real, not." The air shifted. A faint warmth brushed his cheek, as though something had leaned close in the dark. He froze, every muscle rigid. Slowly, carefully, he turned his head toward the blackness yawning below. Whispers rose from the cellar. Dozens of voices layered, all speaking at once, their words muddled and wet. He strained to catch them, heart hammering. One word broke clear through the chorus. "Below." The traveler staggered back a step, heels striking the trapdoor frame. Panic clawed at him. He could run, try again to batter the front door, force a window, throw himself into the night. But the house seemed to sense his hesitation. The stair beneath him trembled. Nails shrieked in their sockets. And from the dark below, something tapped on the lowest step. Once. Twice. 3 times. The same rhythm that had followed him since upstairs. The traveler clenched his jaw. If he stayed where he was, the house would grind him down. If he ran, it would drag him back. He had only one choice left. He took another step down. The traveler's boots sank onto the 3rd step. The wood flexed and squealed, wetness squeezing out between the cracks. He gripped the wall for balance, but even the plaster there felt soft, pulsing faintly as though something beneath it shifted with his touch. He recoiled, wiping his hand against his trousers, though the sensation clung like slime. The whispers below swelled, overlapping, rushing like water in a cavern. Some were high and thin, others low and broken, but all pressed the same rhythm into his ears. Below. 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 He forced himself down another step, his lungs tightening against the thickening air. The smell of rot grew stronger. His eyes watered, throat raw from holding back the urge to gag. Halfway down, he stopped. A sound rose above the chorus, a dragging scrape, as though nails clawed across stone. Then came a wet thud, followed by a sharp crack. Something was moving in the dark. Something large. He raised the broken lantern frame high, though it gave no light now, only his trembling reflection in the glass shards. The black below seemed endless, swallowing every faint shimmer from above. Then, faintly, he saw it, a flicker of motion at the bottom of the steps. A hand, long-fingered, pale, resting on the lowest stair. It withdrew quickly, slipping into shadow. The traveler's breath tore out in ragged bursts. His instincts screamed to turn back, to claw his way out through the parlor window if he had to, but when he glanced up, the trapdoor had swung nearly shut. Only a sliver of light remained, fading as though dusk itself had seeped inside. Another step down. His boot landed in something soft. Wet. He lifted it quickly, while rising in his throat. The step glistened faintly, smeared with something dark. The whispers ceased. The silence was worse. He realized he had stopped breathing. The only sound left was the dull thud of his own heart. He lifted one trembling foot, set it on the final step. The cellar floor yawned before him, black and endless. And then, from somewhere inside that dark, a voice spoke. Not a whisper. Not a chorus. A single, clear, human voice. "You shouldn't have come." The traveler froze, boot hovering above the cellar floor. The voice still rang in his ears, sharp and human, unlike the layered whispers that had chased him through the house. "Who's there?" His words cracked in the still air. "Show yourself." Silence. He lowered his foot cautiously. The ground was damp, packed earth that sucked faintly at his boot sole. The smell of decay was stronger here, thick as a blanket. He gagged behind his sleeve, lantern frame clutched close like a shield. The cellar was vast. He could sense it more than see it, the way sound carried, the air pressing from all sides. His eyes adjusted slowly, enough to catch the faint outlines of pillars stretching upward, supporting the house above. But the wood was wrong. Too thick, too gnarled. As he stepped closer, he realized they weren't pillars at all. Roots. Massive, Twisted roots coiled up from the earth, woven into the beams of the house, pulsing faintly with a rhythm like breath. His chest tightened. The house isn't built on the ground. It's grown from it. The voice came again, nearer now, though he could see nothing. You shouldn't have come. It won't let you leave. The traveler spun, broken lantern raised. Where are you? A low laugh echoed, swallowed quickly by the dark. He stumbled forward, boots splashing into shallow puddles that clung to the dirt. Each step squelched, leaving a sucking sound behind. The roots twisted underfoot, some slick with moisture, others cracked open to reveal pulpy insides. They glistened faintly, as though wet with blood. Something brushed his arm. He jerked back, striking one of the roots. It trembled faintly, a shiver running up its length. The others answered, pulsing harder. For a moment, the entire cellar seemed to breathe. He pressed himself against the wall, breath ragged. His fingers found stone there, rough and damp, but etched with shallow grooves. He traced them with shaking hands, realizing they formed letters. Names. Dozens of them, scrawled in desperate scratches. Every name ended with the same final mark, a line dragged down, broken, unfinished. His hand recoiled. The voice returned, closer still, just behind him this time. You'll be one of them soon. The traveler spun toward the voice, his breath catching in his throat. The lantern frame clattered against his knee, useless. Darkness pressed from all sides, heavy, close. I know you're there! His voice rang thin, swallowed instantly by the vast cellar. Show yourself! For a long moment, nothing. Then came the sound of bare feet on wet earth, slow, deliberate. Step. 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 The traveler backed toward the wall, boots sucking at the mud. His fingers brushed more scratched names, dozens of them gouged deep. He forced himself not to read them. The steps stopped. Silence. He peered into the dark, straining to make out movement. Then, just for a breath, something shifted ahead. A shoulder. An arm. The faint glimmer of skin too pale to belong in such a place. He froze, holding his breath. The voice came again, calm, steady. It feeds on us. Every soul that steps inside, every breath, every drop of fear. You've already given it so much. The traveler swallowed hard, voice breaking. Who are you? Silence again. Then, almost tenderly. Like you? Once. The pale shape moved, slipping between the roots. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw a face, gaunt, hollow-eyed, lips chewed raw. But when he blinked, it was gone. He stumbled forward, trying to follow. Wait! Don't leave me here! The roots shifted beneath his boots, coiling tighter. A low vibration thrummed through the ground, rattling his bones. The smell of iron thickened, suffocating. Above, the house groaned in answer, its beams creaking like ribs expanding. Dust sifted down, clinging to his sweat. The voice rose again, this time from the opposite side of the cellar. You can't fight it. You can only choose, become part of it, or feed it forever. The traveler shook his head violently. No. I'll find a way out. A laugh echoed, hollow, joyless. They all say that. Movement flickered again, closer this time, too quick to see, but near enough that he felt the shift in the air. Something brushed his shoulder, light as a fingertip, before vanishing into the dark. The traveler staggered, clutching the wall. His hand landed on another name etched into the stone. He read it this time, throat tightening. It was his own. The traveler stumbled back from the wall, chest heaving. His name, scratched deep into the stone, letters raw and jagged, seemed to glow faintly in the dim. He ran his shaking fingers across the grooves, hoping it was a trick of his eyes, some hallucination born of fear. But the cuts were real, edges sharp. No! His voice cracked. No, I didn't do this. I didn't. The cellar answered with silence. Heavy, knowing. Then the voice rose again, circling him like smoke. The house writes them when it's ready. It keeps them here. We don't leave. We never leave. The traveler pressed his back against the wall, clutching the broken lantern frame like a weapon. "Show yourself!" His demand came out hoarse, desperate. Footsteps sloshed through the mud, quick, uneven. He turned, but only saw shadows bending, roots shifting. The pale flicker of a hand appeared ahead, then vanished. The whispers returned, swelling from every side. They spoke fragments now, different words tumbling over one another. Hungry, stay, beneath, ours. The traveler clapped his hands over his ears, but it didn't help. The voices pressed inside his skull, buzzing against his teeth, dragging through his veins. "Stop it!" he screamed. His cry was ragged, echoing, swallowed instantly. The whispers hushed. From the black, a laugh came, low, dry, almost human. It slithered through the roots, curling against his spine. The traveler's lantern frame shook in his hands. He swung it blindly into the dark, shards of glass scattering. The sound rang sharp, breaking the suffocating silence. For a moment, nothing moved. Then he saw it, a face between the roots. Sunken eyes glinting, cheekbones sharp, lips split and bleeding. The pale skin stretched tight, mottled with bruises that never healed. He blinked, and it was gone. The voice, closer than ever, whispered, "You look just like I did." The traveler's knees buckled. He sank against the wall, shaking. His eyes darted back to the carved names, tracing them one by one. He saw initials, dates, all cut deep in the stone. One fresh mark appeared as he watched, etching itself with no hand to carve it. A single vertical line dragging down beneath his name. Unfinished. Waiting. The traveler pressed his palms hard against the wall, his breath rasping in the close, damp air. The unfinished line beneath his name still bled into the stone, slow and deliberate, as if carved by an invisible hand. He couldn't look at it anymore. "Why me?" His voice cracked. "Why did it choose me?" The answer came from the dark. "Because you came." Movement stirred ahead, slow and deliberate. Roots shifted aside as if making room. From the black, a figure stepped forward. At first, only the outline emerged, gaunt shoulders, a bent spine, arms dangling too long at the sides. The traveler's heart hammered as pale skin caught faint light, skin stretched thin, mottled with bruises, cracked open in places where dark fluid leaked. The head tilted up. Hollow eyes ringed in black, fixed on him. The traveler staggered back. "No, no, you're not real." The figure took another step, mud sucking at its bare feet. Its lips cracked open, bloodless and raw. "I was. Once." The voice was the same one that had circled him. Low, steady, strangely calm. But spoken from this mouth, it rasped like a knife dragged across stone. The traveler shook his head violently. "Stay away!" The figure didn't obey. Roots shifted behind it, nudging it forward like guiding hands. Its neck twitched as it cocked its head, mirroring the child's gesture from the stairs. "The house keeps us. We feed it, or it feeds on us. That is the only choice." The traveler's grip tightened on the broken lantern frame. "I won't. I'll find a way out." A smile cracked across the figure's face, tearing skin at the corners. It bared no teeth, only a black hollow. "They all say that." The traveler tried to push past, shoving through the roots, but they tightened against his shoulders, resisting like muscle. The figure didn't move to stop him. It only watched, eyes blank, smile widening as if the house itself spoke through it. Then the whispers returned. Not from the walls this time, but from the figure's open mouth, spilling like smoke. "Stay. Stay. Stay." The cellar seemed to pulse with the chant, and the pale figure stretched out its hand. The traveler stared at the outstretched hand, pale fingers slick with mud and something darker. His chest rose and fell in ragged bursts. Every instinct screamed at him not to touch it. He shook his head violently. "No!" The figure tilted its head, almost curious. Its hand did not waver. Roots shifted behind it, creaking in unison like bones under strain. "You will." The traveler pressed tighter against the wall, broken lantern frame raised. "I won't." The figure's smile widened until the skin at its cheeks split further. black fluid seeping down its chin. The cellar hummed with low vibrations, the walls trembling. Roots stirred around the traveler's boots, coiling just shy of his ankles. He slashed at them with the jagged lantern glass. They recoiled with a wet hiss, shuddering back into the earth. For a breath, he thought he'd bought himself room to move. But the figure's hand remained outstretched. And now its whisper slipped through the cellar, curling around his ears. "You already gave it blood. It has your name. You belong." The traveler gritted his teeth. "I belong to nothing." With a desperate cry, he lunged forward, swinging the lantern frame at the figure itself. The shards of glass struck its chest with a dull crack. The figure didn't flinch. Instead, the lantern stuck, caught in the figure's flesh as though it had sunk into clay. When he yanked, it wouldn't come free. The figure leaned closer, eyes hollow, breath rancid against his face. "Now it knows you!" Roots lashed forward, striking his wrists and ankles. They coiled, slick and strong, dragging him toward the center of the cellar. He thrashed, cursing, pulling with all his strength, but the earth itself had him. The figure stepped aside, no longer needed. And as the roots pulled him down, the voice whispered once more, softer now, almost kind. "It's beginning." The roots tightened around his wrists and ankles, biting into flesh with slick, fibrous strength. The traveler roared, thrashing against them, but the more he fought, the deeper they burrowed into his skin. Warm blood slid down his arms, dripping onto the packed dirt. The ground shifted beneath him. The cellar floor pulsed like a living thing, mud parting in slow, greedy breaths. Dark water seeped upward, thick as oil. It clung to his boots, sucking, pulling. "No!" His voice broke in panic. He tried to wrench free, tearing at the coils with his bleeding hands, but every time he loosened one, another wrapped tighter. The pale figure watched, silent now, its cracked smile stretched into something almost reverent. The traveler's knees buckled as the ground gave way beneath him. Cold earth swallowed his shins, his thighs, inch by inch. The sucking sound was obscene, a wet chorus that filled the cellar as though hundreds of mouths drank at once. He screamed, raw and desperate. "Let me go! I don't belong here!" The voices in the walls answered, surging all at once. "Stay. Stay. Stay." The mud climbed to his waist, thick and choking. Roots coiled around his chest, pinning his arms. His ribs strained under their pressure. He gasped for air, the stench of rot burning his throat. The pale figure leaned close, its voice rasping in his ear. "It feeds. It always feeds." The ground swallowed his hips, his stomach. He arched his back, head thrown upward, eyes burning with terror. The trapdoor above hung slightly ajar, the faintest sliver of light seeping through. Hope flickered, thin and useless. His arms slipped below the surface. The roots dragged with relentless patience, as though savoring every inch. The mud reached his chest. His chin. Cold, foul earth pressed against his lips. And then, sudden, sharp, the pulling stopped. The roots held him still, buried waist deep, trembling with tension. The cellar itself hushed. From somewhere below, deeper than the house, deeper than the soil, something vast shifted. The ground beneath him was not just earth. It was the mouth of something older. And it had noticed him. The traveler froze, his body locked in the grip of the roots. The cellar air thickened, pressing against his chest until each breath was a struggle. He dared not move. Even his pulse seemed too loud. Beneath him, something stirred. The earth trembled, not like the shift of soil, but like the flex of muscle. A vast exhale rolled upward, heat and rot spilling through the mud, washing over his face. It reeked of centuries, decay and damp stone, blood soaked deep into roots. He gagged, twisting his head away, but the smell clung, filling his lungs. The pale figure knelt beside him, its ruined face tilted in reverence. "Do you feel it? It has woken." The traveler shook his head violently, mud splattering his cheeks. "No, no, it's just the ground. Just—" The roots tightened. A tremor ran up his legs, through his spine, into his skull. A pulse. Slow, steady. Enormous. His breath caught. It was not the house. Not the walls. Something deeper. A voice, not words, not language, pressed against his mind. A groan older than speech itself. The weight of it rattled his teeth, burned behind his eyes. His heart faltered, struggling to keep pace with the rhythm that now pounded in his bones. The ground shifted again. For an instant, the mud beneath him opened, hollow space yawning wide, and he felt the dizzying impression of a cavern stretching endlessly below. Not empty, no, filled. Packed with shapes that twitched and shifted, thousands of them, pressed together in the dark. He squeezed his eyes shut, tears burning down his cheeks. "It isn't real," he whispered. "It isn't." A low rumble cut him off. Not sound. A vibration inside his skull, a growl that bled into thought. Hunger. The mud trembled, rising higher, lapping against his jaw. His mouth filled with the taste of iron. The pale figure leaned close, lips at his ear. "You've been chosen. You'll join us soon." The traveler screamed and thrashed, but the roots held firm, dragging him inch by inch. And below, the presence stirred again, closer this time. Waiting. The traveler's scream tore raw from his throat, echoing into the endless black. But even as it left him, the sound twisted, warped, bent downward into the soil, dragged below as if consumed. The roots pulsed around his limbs, steady and rhythmic, beating in time with the presence below. Each throb sent waves of nausea rolling through his body, his heartbeat forced into unnatural sync. From deep beneath, voices rose. Not whispers this time, but a chorus stretched impossibly thin, as though carried across centuries. Men, women, children, tones overlapping until they became something inhuman. "We are here." The words shook him. His head slammed back against the wall, vision swimming. "No, no, you're gone, you're dead." The voices laughed. Not cruel, not kind, only empty. "We are not gone. We are below." The mud shifted beneath him, rippling as if something vast shifted just under the surface. Shapes pressed upward for seconds at a time, bulges that brushed his trapped legs. Fingers. Faces. Whole bodies. They pressed toward him, mouths open, before sinking back. He sobbed, thrashing harder, nails tearing against the roots that bound him. His skin split, blood seeping into the muck. The ground drank it eagerly. The pale figure leaned close, eyes hollow, smile stretched wide. "It takes what we give. Blood, breath, names. We feed it until we are part of it." The traveler shook his head violently, tears streaking through mud on his cheeks. I won't be like you." The ground heaved beneath him, a swell of pressure so great it forced the air from his lungs. He choked, gagged, coughed mud, and then, through the soil below, he felt it. Not seen. Not yet. Only the shape of it, the size of it. Vast. Unimaginable. Its bulk stretched deeper than the cellar, deeper than the foundations, deeper than he could comprehend. A god entombed in earth. A hunger without end. Its thought pressed against his skull again, heavier this time, drowning out his own mind. Feed. The roots tightened, dragging him another inch lower. The mud quaked, rippling outward in great waves. The roots lashed tighter, dragging him until the muck lapped at his lips. He coughed, spitting soil, but the ground pressed higher, eager to silence him. Then, abruptly, the surface stilled. The air thickened, every sound in the cellar vanishing. The traveler's ears rang with silence so complete it became a pressure, a weight inside his skull. His body trembled against the grip of the roots, and for one fragile moment, he thought the house itself had gone still. And then, something vast shifted just beneath him. The mud parted slightly, enough for a shape to break through. At first it looked like stone, slick with soil, massive in scale. But as the traveler's vision adjusted, he saw it was no stone. It blinked. An eye. Larger than his body, lidless, its surface filmed with muck that slid away in streams. The iris glowed faintly, pale and milky, like the moon drowned under water. Yet within it swirled countless shadows, faces and forms pressing and vanishing in its depths. The traveler screamed, head jerking away, but the eye rolled to follow him. It fixed on him with a weight that pinned his very thoughts. He felt it there, inside him, rummaging, peeling back memory, feeding on every fear he had ever known. The smell of his childhood home burning, the face of his mother fading in fever, nights alone on endless roads. All of it tasted, all of it taken. The pale figure bowed low, mud rising around its wasted body. It sees you now. The eye rolled upward, revealing beneath it a slit in the earth, a mouth too wide, lined with teeth like broken pillars. It stretched, yawning open, the sound a roar without air, a vibration that cracked the walls and sent dust raining from the ceiling. The word pressed into his skull again, heavier, undeniable. Feed. The roots jerked, dragging him down to his shoulders. The traveler thrashed, choking on mud, his scream bubbling silent. His blood smeared the roots, soaking into the earth, feeding the thing beneath. And the eye watched, unblinking, as though savoring its meal. The traveler's shoulders sank beneath the sucking mud, cold pressing against his throat. He threw his head back, gasping at the damp cellar air, every breath ragged. Roots squeezed tighter around his ribs until he felt the crack of bone, sharp pain flaring through his chest. The eye did not blink. Its vast surface reflected him, a small, broken figure half buried in earth. Yet in its depths he saw more. Faces. Dozens, hundreds. Twisting in silent screams, their mouths opening and closing against invisible walls. They clawed at the inside of the eye as though begging release, only to dissolve into shadow again. The traveler sobbed, mud streaking his lips. "Please," he choked. "I don't want to die here." The pale figure crouched low beside him, its cracked smile stretched ear to ear. "No one dies here. We stay. Forever." The mouth beneath the earth gaped wider. Rows of jagged teeth ground against one another with a sound like boulders splitting. A gust of hot, fetid air surged upward, rattling the roots, filling his lungs with stench. The voice thundered in his skull, vast and merciless. "Feed." The mud surged, swallowing his chin. He spat and thrashed, face burning with desperation. His arms slipped further into the muck, pinned by unyielding coils. His vision blurred with tears and filth. His mind began to crack. Thoughts unraveled, washed away by the presence pressing deeper inside. He saw flashes not his own, men dragged screaming into the cellar centuries before, women clawing at the walls until their nails split, children weeping as roots closed around their throats, their names etched into stone, their lives consumed. And now, his. The pale figure leaned so close its ruined cheek brushed his ear. "It's already written." The ground rose higher. Soil pressed against his lips. His final breath caught in his chest as the eye filled his vision, swallowing everything else. In that instant, he felt the earth open beneath him. A hollow cavern yawning wide, pulling him into a depth that had no end. And just as the mud broke over his mouth, a sound tore through the cellar, sharp, metallic. A door. Somewhere above, hinges screamed. Light, thin, pale, but real, spilled faintly down the cellar stairs. The house had not planned for interruption. The traveler's eyes snapped upward, mud dripping from his lashes. The faintest strip of light cut down the cellar stairs, sharp against the black. It shimmered across the roots holding him, and for the first time they recoiled, just slightly, as if burned. He gasped, dragging what little air he could through his nose. His chest ached, lungs seared, but hope flared bright enough to sting. "Help!" His cry bubbled through mud, ragged and weak. "Down here! Please!" The pale figure's head jerked toward the light, its grin faltering. The roots trembled, vibrating in agitation. Dust sifted from above, stirred by footsteps. Someone was in the house. He heard them now, faint creaks across the parlor floor. Slow, careful steps. Human. "Down here!" His voice cracked with desperation. "I'm trapped!" The roots squeezed tighter, almost in panic. The mud surged again, but unsteady, distracted. The vast presence below rumbled with displeasure, the sound like a cavern collapsing far beneath the soil. The footsteps reached the trapdoor. The sliver of light widened. A silhouette stood at the top of the stairs. The traveler squinted, vision blurred, heart thundering. He could make out a figure, tall, human-shaped, leaning forward as though peering into the cellar. "Please," he begged. "Pull me out, before it takes me." The figure didn't move. It only watched. The light wavered, flickering like a candle in wind. The traveler's stomach dropped. His throat tightened. "Say something!" At last, the silhouette bent, hand gripping the stair rail. Its head tilted at an angle far too sharp. Familiar. Wrong. The traveler's blood ran cold. It was the same tilt as the child at the bottom of the stairs. The same tilt as the pale figure beside him. The same tilt the house had worn since he entered. The trapdoor slammed shut, cutting off the light. The cellar roared in triumph. The roots surged, dragging him deeper. And the pale figure whispered through cracked lips, "There is no one else." The mud pressed hard against his mouth and nose, cold and thick. He turned his head, sucking ragged breaths through the narrow gap left to him, every inhale filled with rot. Roots coiled tighter across his ribs, each one pulsing as though savoring his heartbeat. The pale figure crouched at his side, grin restored. Its hollow eyes glimmered faintly, reflecting something deeper than lantern light. "It toys with you. It likes when they fight." The traveler spat soil, thrashing, but the roots only dug deeper. His arms ached, bones groaning under their grip. The mud reached his ears now, muffling the cellar's vast rumble into a dull underwater roar. Still, he was not yet gone. From above came faint sounds again, floorboards creaking, a door whispering shut. He lifted his head as much as he could, eyes straining toward the trapdoor. Nothing. Only black. The house wanted him to believe he had imagined it. He wept, bitter and broken, mud streaking his cheeks. "Please! I don't want to!" The pale figure leaned closer, cracked lips brushing his ear. "None of us did. But it keeps us. Forever." The traveler shook his head violently, dirt spraying. "I won't! I'll never!" A sudden jolt cut him off. The roots yanked his body down another inch. Mud surged into his mouth, choking him. He gagged, coughed, spat, his throat burning raw. And then, clear inside his skull, came the voice of the house. Not words, but sensation, sharp, metallic, cutting like blades drawn over stone. His memories unraveled, spilling like loose pages. His first road as a boy, the taste of bread after a week's hunger, his mother's hand on his shoulder, gone, swallowed. He screamed into the mud. The pale figure smiled wider. "Yes. That's it. Give it everything." The voices in the walls returned, stronger than ever, chanting in fevered unison. "Stay. Stay. Stay." The traveler thrashed once more, veins bulging, body screaming for air. His head sank lower, mud closing over his eyes. Darkness swallowed him whole. The world collapsed into dark and weight. Mud sealed his eyes, pressed into his ears, filled every hollow of his mouth. The traveler kicked once, twice, but the roots held him fast, pulling in rhythm with something vast beneath. His lungs screamed, each second stretching to eternity. Then silence. Not the silence of the cellar, but deeper. Empty. A void that rang like a bell. His body no longer thrashed. He floated, suspended in black, weightless yet bound. And in that dark, light bloomed. Not warm light, no fire, no lantern, but a pale, endless glow that seeped through him like marrow. He opened eyes he no longer knew he had, and the world around him shifted. He saw the house, not above, but inside. Its bones stretched down, roots fused with walls, rooms like organs pumping shadow. Every window was an eye, every door a mouth. And within it, countless figures moved, pale, hollow, repeating their deaths in silence. He tried to cry out, but no sound came. Only thought. The glow deepened, and the vision widened further, plunging below the roots. He saw the cavern. Vast, endless, lined with bodies pressed into the walls, men, women, children, Limbs fused into earth, faces slack with eternal sleep. Some twitched faintly, lips moving in silent chants. And at the center of it all, something stirred. He glimpsed its bulk, a shape too massive to name, coiled and folded, its skin stone dark and veined with rivers of light. Faces flickered across its surface, appearing and vanishing like reflections on water. It turned toward him. The eye opened again, vast and moon-white, flooding him with sight. His chest caved with the pressure, though no body remained to hold pain. He felt it inside him, clawing through memory, unspooling everything he was. His father's voice. The road he had walked. The stars he once followed. All erased. The pale figure's voice echoed faintly, though it no longer came from beside him. It came from within him. Now you see. The god beneath exhaled. The void shuddered. And the traveler fell deeper still. The pale glow thickened, wrapping around him like fog. The crushing weight of roots and mud seemed to ease. For the first time since entering the house, he felt no pain, no struggle. When his vision cleared, he stood. The cellar was gone. The house too. He was outside, standing in an open field at dawn. The sky burned with soft gold, the horizon glowing with the promise of day. Grass bent gently in the wind, whispering against his boots. His chest heaved. Air. He breathed it deeply, greedily, laughing through sobs. The taste was clean, sharp with dew. I'm free, he whispered. A voice answered, low and smooth. Yes. Free. He spun. Behind him, the road stretched long and straight, leading toward a distant town he half recognized. The world looked brighter than he remembered, every color sharpened, every sound clearer. Home, he said half to himself. I can go home. The voice hummed with approval. Go. Walk. Leave it all behind. He took a step, then another, legs light as though he had shed his weight in the earth. The grass swayed around him, brushing his palms. Birds sang in the distance. But something was wrong. The grass was damp. Too damp. His boots squelched with each step, leaving dark stains that spread quickly through the green. The birdsong faltered, breaking into shrill, rasping cries. The traveler slowed. His stomach tightened. No! The voice whispered again. Softer now, curling into his ears. Why resist? It can be this way. You can have this forever. He glanced back. The field had darkened. The grass no longer bent in wind but writhed, twisting like worms. The sky burned not with dawn but with fire, pale and sickly. And on the horizon, the town was sinking, its houses swallowed one by one into the earth. The traveler stumbled, shaking his head violently. This isn't real. The ground opened at his feet, splitting wide. From the chasm below, the eye blinked up at him, moon-white and endless. The voice thundered, no longer soft. Stay. The field collapsed. The false light died, and he plummeted back into the dark. The traveler landed hard, though there was no floor beneath him, only dark, shifting air. He staggered upright, gasping, trying to steady himself. The silence pressed in close, broken only by the faint throb of the buried god's pulse. Then a voice called out. Not the whisper of the house, not the rasp of the pale figure, but warm, human. Son? The traveler's chest caved. He turned slowly, afraid of what he'd see. She stood there, just a few steps away. His mother. Her frame slight, her hands clasped before her apron, her face tired but kind. Her eyes glistened in the pale light, filled with the same patient love he remembered from childhood. Mother, he whispered, throat tight. His knees nearly buckled. She smiled softly. You've been gone so long. Come home. Tears blurred his vision. I thought I lost you. You did, she said gently. But here you can stay. With me. With all of us. She reached out her hand, palm open, fingers steady. His whole body leaned toward her, aching for the touch he'd lost. His hand lifted, trembling, stretching toward hers. But then, he saw it. Her apron shifted as though stirred by a breeze. Beneath the fabric, something writhed. Small shapes pressed outward against the cloth, hands, faces, mouths, each one opening wide before sinking back. The traveler froze, his fingers inches from hers. Her smile didn't falter. "Don't be afraid. It doesn't hurt. Not after the first time." Her eyes flickered, and for a heartbeat they weren't hers at all. They were pale, lidless, moon-white, filled with endless shadow. The traveler staggered back, shaking his head violently. "You're not her! You're not her!" The figure tilted its head, lips stretching into an all too familiar grin. The voice of the house thundered through her borrowed mouth. "All are mine!" The false mother dissolved into shadow, faces spilling from her form, shrieking silently as they were pulled back into the dark. The traveler collapsed to his knees, sobbing. He could feel the god drawing closer now, its vast bulk pressing against the edges of this dream space, the true weight of it finally breaking through. The ground quaked. The air split. The god was coming. The darkness quaked. The traveler clutched at the shifting ground, his nails tearing through soil that wasn't soil at all. It was warm, pulsing, slick with some inner life. From the void around him, pieces of the god began to rise. First a limb, vast gray, ridged with cracks that wept black fluid. It dragged upward through the dark, its surface studded with faces that opened their mouths in soundless screams before sinking back into the flesh. Fingers, if they could be called that, stretched long as towers, jointed wrong, curling and uncurling in slow, deliberate hunger. The traveler screamed, scrambling back, though there was nowhere to run. The ground beneath him shifted like a living tide, pulling him closer with each heaving breath. Another shape rose behind him. This one like a rib, curving out of the dark, taller than any tree. Its surface pulsed with veins of pale light, beating in time with his own heart. With each pulse, agony flared in his chest, as though the god were rewiring his body to match its rhythm. He fell to his side, clutching his ribs, gasping for air. Then came the mouth. Not the slit he had glimpsed before, but a wider one, yawning open with a groan that rattled the void itself. Its teeth jutted like jagged spires, dripping with black saliva that hissed when it struck the ground. Inside, there was no tongue, no throat, only an abyss that spiraled endlessly downward, swallowing even the pale glow. And above all of it, the eye returned. It rose vast as a moon, lidless, its milky surface rolling until it fixed on him. Shadows writhed within, pressing outward like drowning souls. The weight of its gaze crushed him flat against the trembling ground. The traveler's mind cracked under its enormity. Images burst behind his eyes, centuries of people dragged into the house, swallowed by roots, bled into the soil, fed into this thing. Their cries merged into the chorus he had heard, their names carved in the stone above. His own name burned in his skull. The voice came, louder than ever. Not a whisper now. Not even thought. It was a command, a roar that shook the void. Stay. Feed. Become. The god's limbs stretched wider, the mouth yawning closer. The traveler clawed at the ground, tears streaming, throat raw. I won't! I won't! But the god was already pulling him in. The traveler clawed at the trembling ground, dirt and slime grinding beneath his nails. Every pull only dragged him closer, the earth sloping toward the abyssal mouth yawning wide before him. The god's breath roared hot and rancid, thick with rot and copper. It washed over him in waves, each one stealing the air from his lungs. His stomach heaved, bile burned his throat. Still he thrashed, scraping skin from his palms as he fought for purchase. I won't, he rasped. His voice was small, ragged, lost in the cavernous groan of the thing. I won't be yours! The eye above him rolled, focusing its pale weight on him alone. Shadows writhed within it, pressing outward, faces screaming silently against the surface. He recognized them now, some he had never known, others that twisted into half-familiar echoes. They reached, clawing, begging him to join. The god's voice thundered inside his skull. All are mine! The traveler screamed, forcing himself onto his elbows, dragging his body inch by inch away from the sucking pull. His chest burned, ribs screaming, blood dripping from his arms where roots had flayed him raw. Behind him, the pale figure still knelt in reverence, watching with wide, cracked grin. "You can't fight it. It has your name. It has your blood. It owns you already." The traveler turned wild eyes on it. "Then help me. If you were like me once, help me." The figure's grin trembled. For a breath, its hollow gaze flickered with something else: pain, memory, regret. Its cracked lips parted. "I tried." The god's mouth yawned wider, teeth grinding like mountains. Black fluid poured out, splattering across the ground, sizzling where it struck. The earth trembled violently, dragging the traveler closer still. He howled, shoving himself backward with every ounce of strength, nails tearing to the quick. His arms shook, his lungs burned. He would not go easily. The god's voice pressed again, heavier, crueler. "Feed. Stay. Become." The traveler screamed until his throat shredded. "No!" And for one fleeting instant, the house above trembled. The traveler's cry rang through the void, raw and desperate. For a heartbeat, he thought it had meant something: the trembling of the house above, the brief flicker in the pale figure's grin. Then the god answered. The eye rolled back, and a new sound rose, a grinding shriek as though the very bones of the world split apart. Roots shot from the trembling ground, lashing across his body with brutal force. They coiled around his chest, his throat, his jaw. He choked, gagging as one forced its way between his lips. Mud and blood filled his mouth. His scream cut short, strangled into silence. The god's voice thundered inside him, no longer words but raw command, a flood of hunger crashing through his mind. He saw visions not his own. A farmer, centuries before, dragged screaming into the earth. A family huddled together as the walls of the house split, roots pulling them limb by limb. A soldier, blade raised in defiance, crushed into the soil until his armor bent inward like paper. Each memory sank into him like hooks, dragging at the remnants of who he was. The pale figure crept closer, crouching low. "This is what happens when you fight. The house doesn't forget. The house doesn't forgive." The root in his mouth writhed deeper, gagging him, choking him. He coughed blood, body convulsing against the grip. His vision blurred, edges dimming. The eye above flared white. A wordless roar split the void, a vibration that shattered every thought left to him. He collapsed back into the muck, body twitching, breath shallow. His chest heaved against the crushing roots, ribs straining with every desperate gasp. And still, his mind whispered defiance. "No. Not yet. Not me." The god pressed harder, filling him with its weight, forcing him to the brink. But something deep inside him refused to yield. His heart stuttered once. Then again. And then it steadied, beating out of rhythm with the god's pulse. The roots tightened, every coil pressing him deeper into the muck. His chest screamed under the weight, ribs aching, lungs drowning in airless pressure. The god's rhythm pounded through him, steady, crushing, demanding. Thrum, thrum, thrum. Each beat threatened to smother his own heart, to override its fragile stutter. For long, suffocating moments, he thought it would succeed. His body convulsed in time with it, breath tearing shallow, every vein burning as though filled with fire. But then, faint, stubborn, his heart skipped. Offbeat. Wrong. Thrum. Thrum. Beat. The god's rhythm surged, pressing harder. Roots pulsed against him, veins inside them glowing faintly with pale light. They forced themselves deeper into his wounds, into his mouth, into his chest. Thrum. 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 His heart jolted again, refusing. "Not yours," he croaked around the choking root, words muffled, broken. "Not yet." The pale figure leaned closer, its grin faltering. Its hollow eyes widened, confusion flickering. "You can't, no one can." The traveler writhed, bloodied hands clutching the root at his mouth. With a roar of agony, he bit down hard, teeth sinking deep. The root spasmed, black fluid spraying across his face. It recoiled, ripping free. Air. precious, filthy, burning air rushed into his lungs. He gagged, coughed, spat muck. His chest rose in wild, desperate rhythm, not the gods, not the houses, but his own. The void shuddered. The eye above him dilated wide, pale light flaring. The ground quaked with fury, roots thrashing in all directions. Faces flickered across its limbs, screaming silently. The god had noticed. The pale figure shrieked, voice cracking. "Stop! You'll wake it fully!" The god's roar split the dark, heavier than before, slamming into his skull with unbearable force. "You are mine!" The traveler's heart hammered back, wild and uneven. "No!" he screamed, blood dripping from his mouth. "I'm still me!" The void cracked with that clash of wills. And for the first time, the house above groaned not with hunger, but with strain. The ground split beneath him, mud churning like a sea in storm. The god's roar sank into marrow, tearing through thought and bone alike. His fragile spark of defiance wavered under its weight. Then came the visions. They hit all at once, an avalanche of lives devoured, poured straight into his skull. He was no longer himself. He was hundreds. Thousands. A woman dragged screaming down these same cellar stairs, her nails snapping against the doorframe. A child reaching for her doll as roots wrapped her ankles, pulling her into the dark. A man begging forgiveness as he drowned in the same muck that now filled the traveler's throat. Each vision slammed into him like a hammer, tearing apart the edges of his mind. His lungs burned, his body convulsed. His own memories blurred among theirs, his mother's voice mingling with strangers, his childhood road winding into places he'd never been. He clutched his head, shrieking, "Get out of me!" But the god pressed harder, flooding him with centuries. Villagers who built the house and prayed to its depths. Priests who thought they could sanctify it, only to be consumed. Wanderers like him, lured in by its waiting door, one after another, always ending here. "All are mine," the voice thundered. "You are mine." He saw their names carved in the stone wall, one after the other, each etched line a chain. His own name glowed brightest, the unfinished mark dragging downward in his vision. The pale figure howled, clutching its own skull, as though the god's rage burned even those already bound. "Don't fight! Don't fight it!" The traveler gasped, drowning in memories that weren't his. His identity unraveled, fraying at the edges. He saw himself not as one man but as a thread in an endless tapestry, woven into the body of the house, feeding the thing below. And yet, through the storm, a single thought clawed its way up. No. His own. Small, stubborn. No. He seized it, clutching the word like a blade, pressing it against the flood. The visions faltered, just slightly. The god roared louder, shaking the void. "You will break." But the traveler's heart beat wild, furious, defiant. And for the first time, the visions cracked. The crack in the visions glimmered like a hairline fracture in glass, thin, fragile, hopeful. The traveler clung to it, pressing his mind against it with everything he had. But the god felt it too. The eye above narrowed, its pale iris flaring. The ground convulsed, roots lashing like whips. They struck across his chest and arms, reopening wounds, grinding him back into the muck. Break. The word tore through him like a blade, shredding the thought he clung to. The crack sealed. The flood returned. He fell screaming into it. He was a dozen dying throats at once, choking on mud. He was 100 arms, clawing at earth until fingernails tore away. He was endless names carved into stone, each one screaming as it was etched. His identity blurred to nothing. He could not find himself. He was them. The pale figure shrieked, thrashing in the dark. Its voice overlapped his, torn between agony and devotion. "Yes! Yes! Give in! Feed it!" The god pressed harder. The visions sharpened, crueler. His mother again, her face pale and kind, her voice pleading. "Stay with me. Please! Don't leave me again." He reached for her, sobbing. His hand brushed hers, warm, familiar. For an instant, he wanted nothing more than to sink into her arms, to surrender. But then he saw it. The same grin. The same tilt of the head. The worming shapes writhing beneath her skin. Not her. Never her. Something in him snapped. His scream tore through the visions, raw, broken, but his own. "I am not yours!" The god roared back, the sound shattering. The ground split wider, the eye blazing white, shadows shrieking within it. The traveler's heart thundered, offbeat, wrong, defiant. For the briefest instant, the visions faltered again. And this time, the crack spread wider. The crack widened, light seeping through the flood of visions. The traveler clung to it, his scream still echoing, ragged but alive. For a heartbeat, he thought he had won something. The god answered with silence. A silence so vast it swallowed the void, pressing into him like ice. His lungs froze, his heart stuttered. For a moment, he believed it was over, that the god had recoiled, beaten back. Then the illusion came. The mud, the roots, the endless dark, gone. He was standing again in the parlor of the house. The lantern burned steady at his side, its glow warm, familiar. The furniture stood beneath white sheets, still and quiet. The teacup rested neatly on the table, unbroken. No dust. No rot. Only silence, peaceful and calm. The traveler blinked, dizzy, disoriented. "No, this isn't right." From the staircase above came a soft creak. His breath caught. But instead of dread, he felt warmth spread through his chest. A figure descended, slow and steady. Not pale. Not broken. Whole. It was his father. Not as he remembered at the man's end, thin, coughing, lungs rotted by sickness, but young, strong. His eyes bright, his smile proud. "Son," his father said gently, as though no years had passed. "You made it home." The traveler's throat tightened. Tears welled. I can't. You're gone. I buried you myself." His father reached out, calloused hand warm in lantern light. "You don't have to fight anymore. Just rest. Stay with us. Stay home." The traveler's knees buckled. He longed to take that hand, to sink into it, to believe. His own hand rose, trembling, reaching. But then, he saw it. The grin, hidden beneath the smile. The faint tilt of the head. The eyes, too pale, too wide. And behind his father's outline, the parlor walls pulsed, wet and breathing. The traveler recoiled with a ragged scream. "No!" The illusion shattered like glass. He was back in the void, the god's eye blazing above, mouth yawning wide. The pale figure writhed on the ground beside him, shrieking in pain as the crack in the visions widened again. And this time, it did not close. The crack gaped wide, light bleeding into the void like a wound. The traveler staggered within it, chest heaving, bloodied hands clawing at the mud that clung to him. For the first time, he felt something shift, control bending, slipping. The god felt it too. The eye above flared white, veins of light splitting the void. Its roar thundered so deep it rattled his bones loose. The mouth gaped wider, rows of teeth grinding like mountains colliding. Roots erupted from the ground in a frenzy, lashing across him with brutal force. They wrapped his arms, his chest, his throat, yanking him upward, suspending him like prey before the eye. His ribs screamed with pressure, his vision blurred. The air around him grew heavy, crushing, as though the entire weight of the house pressed down. The pale figure shrieked, voice torn between awe and terror. "It comes for you! It comes for you!" The god hurled its body against him. A limb the size of a tower rose from the dark, studded with screaming faces, and slammed into the earth beside him. The ground split open, a chasm yawning to reveal more mouths, each one gnashing and snapping in fevered hunger. The traveler dangled above it, thrashing, blood streaming from fresh gashes where roots cut into his skin. His breath came in shallow gasps, every rib straining to the point of breaking. The god's voice tore through his skull again, furious and vast. "You are mine! You will feed!" The eye rolled closer, filling his vision entirely. Its milky surface pressed down on his mind until he thought his skull would shatter. Shadows within it clawed at the glassy surface, desperate to drag him in. His chest buckled under the weight. His heart faltered, stumbling out of rhythm. Still, he roared back, ragged and broken. "No!" The void trembled. The pale figure fell silent, staring with hollow eyes as cracks spidered across the walls of darkness itself. For the first time, the god's grip slipped. The cracks in the void spread like lightning, thin veins of pale light spidering outward. The traveler felt the pressure ease for a heartbeat, just long enough to draw a full breath. Then the god struck back. The roots jerked violently, snapping him upward like a rag doll. His head whipped back, vision spinning. Blood sprayed from his wrists where the coils tore deeper into flesh. The eye above narrowed, burning with pale fury. The ground convulsed, heaving upward in waves, driving him closer to the vast mouth below. It yawned wide. The traveler's scream was torn from him as hot air blasted upward, carrying the stink of rot and centuries-old blood. The teeth clashed together, a sound like stone shattering. Black saliva rained across his skin, sizzling where it struck. The pale figure crawled closer, bowing low, its cracked grin stretched until the skin of its face split. "It takes you! It takes you!" The traveler thrashed, every muscle screaming, ribs grinding under the pressure of the roots. His vision blurred, white edges gnawing at the dark. The maw widened below, an endless abyss ready to claim him. "No!" he roared, voice shredded. "I won't feed you!" The god answered not with words, but with force. The roots snapped him downward, dragging him toward the abyss. The teeth ground in anticipation, shadows writhing within the maw like countless bodies waiting to be swallowed. The heat scorched his face, his lungs, his heart. The eye loomed above, watching with merciless hunger. The traveler's defiance faltered. He could feel himself unraveling, pulled apart by the sheer will of the thing. His body was weak, broken. His mind frayed at the edges. Still, his heart beat wrong, off rhythm. A ragged drum that refused to fall in line. The maw opened wider, blackness surging to swallow him whole. And just before he crossed its threshold, he screamed again, not for mercy, not for help, but with fury. "I am not yours!" The void shuddered. The cracks widened. The god hesitated. The god did not release him. The hesitation lasted only a breath, then the roots wrenched tighter, jerking him downward. His body slammed against the jagged teeth, pain tearing through him as skin split and blood poured fresh. The air turned searing hot, heavy with stench. And then he was inside. The maw closed behind him with a sound like thunder, sealing him in darkness so complete it felt alive. The roots loosened only to hurl him deeper, tossing him into a pit slick with saliva and blood. He hit the ground hard, sliding across flesh that pulsed like muscle. He gagged, coughing mud and bile, chest heaving. His palms pressed against the floor. It was not solid, not stone, but a slick surface that flexed beneath his touch. It throbbed in rhythm with the god's heart. Faces bulged from the walls. Dozens, hundreds. They pressed outward, mouths open in endless screams, eyes rolling wildly. Some reached with half-formed hands, their fingers breaking against the membrane before they were dragged back inside. The traveler stumbled to his feet, blood running from his wrists and chest. No, this isn't real. But it was. Every scream rang sharp in his skull. Every face turned toward him, mouths opening wider, as if begging him to join. The god's voice thundered, reverberating from every surface. "Become!" The walls quivered, tightening inward. The floor rose, pressing him toward the writhing membrane. Faces pressed against his back, cold and wet, their mouths whispering against his skin. He shoved away, slipping in the muck, but there was nowhere to run. Every surface breathed. Every inch belonged to it. The pale figure's voice echoed faintly, distant now, carried through the flesh of the god. "This is where we all go. This is where we stay." The traveler fell to his knees, shaking, the walls pressing closer. Faces leaned near, mouths opening against his ears. Their voices were his own, hundreds of versions of himself, all chanting in unison. "Stay! Stay! Stay!" he screamed, clutching his skull. "I am not you!" The chamber shuddered. The walls faltered, just slightly, rippling in resistance. And his heart thundered again, wild, defiant, breaking the rhythm. The traveler's scream rattled the chamber, his voice cracking as it tore through the walls of flesh. For a heartbeat, the pressure eased. His heart pounded offbeat, loud in the silence. The god's reply came not as thunder this time, but as vision. The walls rippled. The faces pressing outward shifted, until they were his. Dozens. Hundreds. Each one hollow-eyed, skin pale and sagging, mouths split into two wide grins. They opened their lips in unison, their voices a mirror of his own. We said the same. We thought we were different. The traveler shook his head violently, stumbling backward into the slick floor. No. You're not me. One face leaned close, lips stretching against the membrane, almost breaking through. Its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting his terror. I fought. I defied. I lost. Another pressed against his shoulder, cold and wet. I stayed. The floor buckled, dragging him lower. He slipped, catching himself on the pulsing wall. The flesh trembled beneath his palms, and where he touched, faces bloomed, his own again, each at a different age. A boy, wide-eyed and afraid. A man, weary from the road. An old husk, broken and bent. All of them whispered together, "This is your end. This is what you become." His stomach clenched. Bile rose in his throat. His heart thundered faster, fighting the rhythm pressing in. No, not me, not yet. The chamber tightened, closing in. The faces converged, layering one atop another until they formed a single vast image. His face, stretched across the wall, its grin splitting wider and wider until it tore ear to ear. It spoke in his own voice, deeper, final. Stay. The traveler collapsed, clutching his skull, blood seeping through his fingers. His mind wavered, his heart stumbling under the weight. For a moment, he almost believed it. But then his pulse spiked again, wild and uneven, defying the god's rhythm. The chamber shuddered, faces distorting, cracks spreading across the membrane. The god roared, furious, the sound shaking the marrow of the world. The god's roar split the chamber, rattling every face until their jaws snapped open in unison. The sound was a gale, a tidal wave of hunger that crashed through the traveler's skull. He doubled over, blood pouring from his nose, his ears, his eyes. His body convulsed, bones straining as if they might crack under the pressure. The walls convulsed in answer. Roots burst through the floor, whipping across him, wrapping his arms and legs, crushing his ribs until he screamed. His voice came out raw, shredded, drowned beneath the chorus of his own countless reflections. Each face spoke now, layered, endless, pressing into his head. You are us. You are ours. You cannot leave. The root around his throat squeezed, air cutting off, visions swimming with white bursts of light. His heart pounded frantically, desperate, stumbling against the god's pulse that sought to drag it into rhythm. The mouth above yawned wider, teeth clashing. A storm of black saliva rained down, hissing where it struck, burning his skin in hot rivulets. The floor tilted, slick with bile, dragging him toward the abyss. The pale figure appeared again, half-formed, crawling along the walls like an insect. Its grin was gone, replaced by hollow despair. Stop fighting, it only makes it worse. Let it take you. Please. The traveler spat blood, gasping through a crushed throat. I won't. The eye opened within the chamber itself, no longer above but all around, filling every surface. Its pale iris burned with furious light, shadows writhing inside, pressing against the membrane as though they longed to burst free. Its voice thundered, louder than ever. Feed. Stay. Become. The walls pressed in. The roots dragged tighter. His chest cracked with the strain. His own face loomed from every direction, screaming, laughing, begging. The traveler's mind faltered. His body weakened. His defiance flickered. For a moment, one terrible moment, he believed he was lost. Then his heart thundered wrong again, ragged and furious. And the chamber cracked. The chamber split with a sound like stone shearing under pressure. A jagged crack tore across the wall of flesh, pale light bleeding through. The faces nearest it screamed, their mouths widening until they split apart, swallowed by the rupture. The god roared, furious, its voice a quake that shook the marrow of the world. Roots thrashed wildly, dragging the traveler back, but the crack spread further, splitting wider, spilling brightness into the chamber. The traveler staggered to his feet, chest heaving, his throat raw. Blood streamed down his arms where the roots had torn him open, but still he stood. His heart thundered offbeat, a wild drum that the god's rhythm could not smother. The pale figure shrieked from the wall, its broken grin twisting. "No! Don't look! Don't follow! That way is not for us!" The traveler's eyes locked on the opening. Beyond the tearing flesh, he glimpsed not light exactly, but something stranger, a tunnel carved of raw stone, spiraling upward, its walls slick with moisture. It pulsed faintly, as though alive, yet it was not the same as the god's chamber. It looked separate. The roots lashed tighter, pulling him down toward the abyssal maw. The floor tilted, dragging him closer to its waiting teeth. Hot air blasted up, carrying the stench of endless rot. But the crack yawned wider still, spilling pale light across him. For a heartbeat, the pressure eased. The god had not made this path. It resisted it, as though the rupture was not its will but its wound. The traveler's heart raced. His chance. The roots jerked, trying to force him down. He dug his bleeding fingers into the pulsing floor, dragging himself inch by inch toward the tear. Flesh tore under his nails, black fluid spraying. He gagged at the taste, but kept pulling. The pale figure wailed, clawing at its own skull. "You don't understand. You'll wish you stayed." The traveler screamed back, voice ragged, furious. "Better to die trying than stay forever." The crack widened one last time, splitting the chamber open. And beyond it, the path waited. The crack gaped wide now, the pale tunnel spiraling upward beyond it. The traveler crawled toward it, hands and knees slick with black fluid, chest rattling with every breath. His heart pounded wild, ragged, defiant. He reached the edge. The light washed across his bloodied skin, sharp and cold, stinging like frost. And he hesitated. What was beyond? Was it freedom, or another trick, another chamber of teeth waiting to close? The pale figure's shrieks clawed at him. "Not that way! Not that way!" His body trembled, torn between hope and terror. That pause was enough. The god roared, fury shaking the chamber apart. Roots surged from the walls, faster than before, striking like serpents. One coiled around his ankle, yanking hard. His body slammed onto the slick flesh, ribs screaming as he was dragged back toward the maw. "No!" His nails carved bloody trails as he clawed at the edge of the crack. "I won't!" The eye flared all around him, burning with pale fire. Shadows within it writhed, clawing against the surface, desperate to drag him in. The god's voice thundered, a final decree. "Mine!" The maw below yawned wider, its teeth grinding, the abyss waiting. Heat roared up, a furnace of rot and hunger. The traveler screamed, his fingers slipping on the edge. The crack's light glared into his eyes, blinding, searing. His ankle burned where the root tightened, crushing bone. Desperation surged like fire through his veins. With a final roar, he twisted, driving his bleeding nails into the root. He tore at it savagely, ripping flesh, splitting fibers, until black ichor gushed across his chest. The root spasmed, loosened. With the last of his strength, he hurled himself forward into the crack. The chamber roared behind him, the god's fury shaking the void as the flesh slammed shut. And then, he was falling. Not down. Up. The traveler hurtled upward through the crack, weightless for a breathless instant, before slamming against the slick stone of the tunnel. He clawed for purchase, his bloodied fingers scraping along damp rock that pulsed faintly beneath his touch. The tunnel twisted above, spiraling into pale light that shimmered like dawn. He dragged himself upward, breath tearing through his chest. His ribs screamed, his body shredded, but still he climbed. Each pull was agony, each slip a threat to plunge back into the roaring dark below. The god did not release him easily. The walls shivered, trembling with rage. Roots burst from cracks in the stone, lashing like whips. One struck across his back, tearing flesh. Another wrapped his wrist, yanking him sideways against the wall until bone cracked. He screamed, but kept climbing, dragging himself higher. The tunnel narrowed, pressing close. The stone rippled as though alive, ridges grinding against his shoulders, squeezing until his breath came in gasps. Faces bulged from the rock, their mouths opening in silent howls, their eyes pale and endless. They whispered his name, over and over, in voices not his own. Stay! 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 The traveler roared, shoving upward. I am not yours! The tunnel buckled, twisting violently. The walls stretched, then clamped down, trying to crush him like an insect. He wedged his bleeding arms against either side, chest heaving, ribs groaning with the strain. For a heartbeat, he thought he would break. But then his heart thundered again, wrong and wild, defiant to the end. The tunnel shuddered, cracks spreading in the stone. Pale light poured through. With a final, savage scream, he forced himself upward, tearing through the last narrowing. The rock split open with a shriek like tearing flesh, and he spilled out onto the floor of the house above. The parlor. Silent. Still. The rocking chair lay overturned. The broken teacup scattered in shards. The front door stood wide open. The traveler lay sprawled on the parlor floor, chest heaving, blood streaking across the warped boards. Every breath was ragged, but it was his own, no longer dragged in rhythm with the god below. He pushed himself up on shaking arms. His wrists burned, his ribs screamed, but still he rose. The front door stood open. Cool night air drifted through the threshold, carrying the smell of damp grass, of pine, of rain-soaked soil. For the first time in what felt like centuries, the stench of rot receded. His eyes filled with tears. He staggered forward, each step an agony. His boots crunched across porcelain shards, the broken teacup gleaming faintly in the moonlight. The overturned rocking chair loomed, but silent now still. The door was only a few steps away. His heart hammered. Behind him, the house groaned. The sound froze him in place. It was not the furious roar of the god, not the whispering voices that had tormented him. It was a low, weary creak, like the settling of old timbers. A sound almost disappointed. He turned, trembling. The parlor walls were still. The ceiling sagged, but no footsteps echoed above. The wallpaper peeled in silence. Had he beaten it? His gaze darted to the cellar door. It hung half open, the rug shoved aside. Darkness yawned beneath, silent and patient. He thought he saw it shift, just slightly, as though the earth below still breathed. Not yours, he whispered hoarsely, clutching his ribs. Not anymore. He stumbled to the doorway. Moonlight touched his face, cold and clean. He stepped across the threshold, boots sinking into wet grass. The night spread wide around him, trees rustling in the wind, the sky scattered with stars. He sobbed, falling to his knees. He was free. But behind him, the house groaned again. This time, the sound carried words. Stay. The door slammed shut. The traveler staggered to his feet, lungs burning, knees sinking into wet grass. He stared at the tree-line, the distant stars, the vast horizon stretching beyond. It was all real. He could smell the rain-soaked earth, feel the chill wind on his torn skin. For a moment, he dared to hope. He limped forward, every step a battle. His ribs protested with sharp knives of pain, his wrists slick with blood, but the night air buoyed him. He left the crooked silhouette of the house behind, its shuttered windows dark and still. Each step away loosened the pressure in his skull, the god's rhythm fading. His heart thundered free, wild, defiant. But the silence of the night was wrong. The forest beyond the clearing stood too still. No crickets sang, no owls called. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. He paused, chest heaving. His eyes darted back. The house stood silent. Its roof sagged, its porch tilted, its siding gray with rot. Ordinary. Lifeless. But the windows gleamed faintly in the moonlight. Too faintly. Too evenly. Like eyes. He shuddered, forcing himself onward. "It's over," he whispered. "It has to be." The grass squelched beneath his boots. Mud clung thick and wet, slowing him. The air grew colder with every step. His breath smoked in pale wisps. Then he noticed, the ground sloped upward. The forest, though it seemed so close, never grew nearer. The trees remained just beyond reach, their trunks swaying faintly, their branches beckoning. He quickened his pace. Limping, dragging, pushing. His breath came in ragged bursts, ribs searing with every gasp. Still the treeline stayed the same distance away. His pulse spiked. He turned back. The house was closer. He staggered, blinking, wiping blood and mud from his eyes. No, it couldn't be. He had walked 100 steps, more, and yet the house loomed only yards behind, its windows gleaming brighter now, reflecting no stars. The rocking chair on the porch moved gently, though no wind stirred. The traveler's throat tightened. "No. No, I left you." The house groaned, timbers bowing, the sound traveling through the clearing like breath. "Stay." The trees ahead seemed to lean farther away. He was still in its grasp. The traveler's pulse hammered in his ears. He refused to turn back again. The house would not claim him. Not after everything. He forced his battered body forward, legs pumping despite the fire in his ribs. The grass slapped against his shins, mud tugging at his boots, but he pushed harder, gasping with each step. The forest loomed ahead, closer now. He swore it was closer. "Come on," he rasped, voice breaking. "Just a little farther." The earth shifted. He stumbled as the ground tilted beneath him, the slope reversing. What had been an uphill climb now dragged downward, pulling him back toward the clearing. His boots slid, mud sucking greedily, thickening until it clutched his ankles. "No!" He yanked one leg free, then the other, staggering forward. Each step tore loose with a wet rip, as though the ground itself refused to let him go. The trees swayed farther away. Their trunks stretched impossibly tall, their branches arching overhead until they formed a distant ceiling of black. No matter how fast he ran, they receded, the horizon bending, curving. The traveler's breath tore through his chest. He risked a glance behind. The house followed. It did not walk. It did not shift. Yet every time he blinked, it stood nearer. Its porch sagged, its roof hunched, its windows gleaming. The rocking chair moved, faster now, creaking in rhythm with his pulse. Panic surged. He screamed, raw and hoarse, hurling himself forward. The forest loomed closer, closer. The earth yawned open. A fissure split before him, mud and grass tearing apart to reveal the same black muck he had nearly drowned in. Roots writhed within, slick and hungry, snapping upward like grasping hands. He skidded to a halt, boots teetering at the edge. Behind him, the house groaned, its windows blazing pale. The fissure stretched wider, cutting him off. The forest vanished into the distance. The clearing bent and folded until the world seemed to curl inward, funneling him back toward the waiting door. The traveler's chest heaved. His hands trembled at his sides. There was no outrunning it. He had to face it. The traveler staggered at the edge of the fissure, chest heaving, heart ragged. The mud within writhed with roots, slick and hungry, snapping at the air like jaws. The earth groaned beneath his boots, splitting wider with each breath. Behind him, the house loomed closer, though he had not moved. Its windows blazed pale, swallowing the moonlight. The rocking chair creaked, faster now, as if mocking his heartbeat. The fissure leapt wider, snapping shut the path ahead. Soil collapsed into the muck, roots surging upward. One lashed across his leg, wrapping tight around his shin. He screamed, tearing at it with bloody fingers, but the grip held fast. The ground tilted. The clearing itself bent like a bow, its edges folding inward, funneling him backward toward the house. The trees stretched higher and higher until they disappeared into black, their roots pulling free from the earth to twist toward him like skeletal fingers. The traveler clawed at the grass, dragging himself forward, but the soil slipped beneath him, offering no hold. Roots lashed around his wrists, dragging him inch by inch toward the door. "No!" he screamed, voice ragged. "I won't go back!" The house groaned in reply, a sound of wood straining, nails tearing free. The door swung wide, spilling a pale glow across the grass. The cellar's breath rolled outward, damp and cold, carrying whispers. "Stay!" The traveler kicked, thrashed, tore at the roots with savage strength. He ripped one free, black ichor spraying across his chest. But three more replaced it, binding his arms, his throat, his waist. The fissure closed behind him with a sucking roar, the forest gone as if it had never been. There was only the clearing, the house, the door. The roots dragged him across the grass, his nails leaving bloody trails in the soil. His boots caught on the threshold, but the pull was relentless. The door yawned wider, swallowing him whole. And the house sighed in satisfaction as the world outside sealed shut. The traveler hit the parlor floor hard, the air bursting from his lungs. The roots slid away into the boards, leaving only slick trails of black ichor that seeped into the wood. The door slammed behind him with a thunderous crack, shutting out the night. Silence fell. He lay trembling, cheek pressed against the warped boards. The faint smell of ash lingered, the ghost of his failed fire. His blood mingled with old stains that darkened the floor, countless others who had lain here before. Slowly, he pushed himself upright. His ribs screamed. His wrists bled freely, slicking his palms. The parlor stood just as it had the first time, the broken teacups scattered in porcelain shards, the wallpaper peeling in long curls, the rocking chair tipped gently with every sigh of the house. Yet everything felt closer now. The ceiling lower, the walls bent inward, the space smaller, as though the house had shrunk around him. He staggered to the hearth, leaning heavily against the mantel. His reflection wavered faintly in the cracked glass above. His own face looked hollow, eyes sunk deep, skin smeared with blood and mud. Behind his reflection, shadows moved. He whirled. Nothing. Only the empty room. A floorboard groaned above. Then another. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Crossing from one end of the house to the other. The traveler's pulse spiked. He stumbled toward the front door, seizing the knob with bloodied fingers. It turned loosely, spinning without catch. He slammed his shoulder against the wood. It did not move. The footsteps grew louder, descending the stairs. His gaze darted to the cellar door. Still open. The rug shoved aside, the black mouth gaping wide. Cold air poured up, thick with damp and rot. The footsteps stopped at the base of the stairs. The traveler's breath caught. He could not see it, but he felt it watching, waiting. The cellar whispered, louder now, countless voices rising as one. Below. The traveler staggered back, caught between what waited above and the pull below. And the house creaked with delight, closing its trap. The traveler's chest heaved as he stared at the staircase. Each step groaned under a weight he could not see. Shadows thickened along the railing, swallowing the pale light that seeped from the parlor. Stay! The voices breathed above, low and many. His legs trembled. He backed toward the cellar, bloodied hands raised as if they could fend off what descended. The rocking chair tipped once, twice, then stilled. The air grew heavy, pressing into his ribs, urging him downward. No, he whispered, voice shaking. Not again. Not there. A shape shifted at the top of the stairs. Small. Pale. Its head tilted at that familiar, broken angle. The traveler's breath hitched. His knees buckled. The shape took one step. Then another. The boards wailed beneath its weight. The cellar behind him whispered louder, voices curling into his ears, his blood, his bones. Below. 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 He spun toward the front door again, desperation flaring. He clawed at the knob, battered the wood with his shoulder. Nothing. The door did not so much as tremble. The pale shape reached the last step. Its grin split wider, impossibly wide. The traveler's scream tore free, raw and hopeless. The floor buckled beneath him. With a violent crack, the boards split, opening like jaws. He plunged downward, arms flailing, dragged not by roots this time but by the house itself. The parlor tilted, feeding him into the waiting dark of the cellar. He struck the damp steps hard, bones jolting. His vision swam with stars. The cellar door slammed shut above him, sealing out even the faint glow of the parlor. He lay sprawled at the bottom of the stairs, chest heaving, mud slick beneath his hands. The voices rose in chorus, no longer coaxing but triumphant. Stay. 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 The pale figure's whisper rasped just behind his ear. You can't leave. You belong. And the dark ahead pulsed, opening wide to receive him. The traveler pushed himself unsteadily to his feet, mud dripping from his palms. The cellar was not as he remembered. The narrow stairwell that had once funneled him into the dark was gone. In its place stretched a corridor of stone, slick with moisture, vanishing into shadow. He staggered forward, ribs screaming, boots squelching in muck. The walls pressed close, pulsing faintly as though veins ran through them. Carvings gouged the stone, names, hundreds of them, etched deep in frantic hands. His eyes darted across them. He recognized some. Others he could not read, scratched into ruin. His own glowed faintly, the line beneath dragging lower, longer. The corridor split. Left and right. Both swallowed in black. The voices slithered through the air, whispering from both directions. Stay. Below. Become. He chose left. The path narrowed until the ceiling bent low, forcing him to crouch. The walls quivered with every breath, dripping with foul water that streaked his skin. Ahead he saw a faint glow. Relief flared until he reached it. It was not light. It was eyes. Dozens, embedded in the wall, pale and lidless. They rolled toward him in unison, their gazes pinning him. Faces pressed outward around them, mouths opening wide. The whispers grew deafening, tearing into his skull. He staggered back, stumbling into the other corridor. It twisted downward, the floor sinking into wet stone steps. He slipped, catching himself on the wall, only to feel it pulse under his hand like muscle. His skin crawled. At the bottom lay a chamber, larger than the rest. In the center stood a table of rotting wood, its surface littered with broken teacups. A chair rocked gently beside it, empty. The traveler's throat tightened. He stepped closer. The chair stopped rocking. A figure sat. Pale. Head tilted. Grin wide. His breath caught. It was himself. The traveler froze at the sight of the figure in the rocking chair. The lantern light shimmered across its face, his face. Hollow-eyed, gaunt, mud-streaked, lips split into the same too-wide grin he had seen on every pale thing in the house. It tilted its head. The same angle. The same crack of bone. No, he whispered, staggering back. Not me. The double leaned forward, its grin never faltering. Its voice was his own, warped, echoing as though spoken through water. But you are here. You stayed. You belong. The traveler shook his head violently. I fought you. I broke free. I don't belong. The double rose from the chair. Its movements were jerky, puppet-like, but steady. Mud dripped from its arms, steaming where it struck the floor. It spread its hands wide. You've already fed it. Blood. Breath. Memory. What more is left but to surrender? His pulse spiked. He backed toward the corridor, but the walls shifted, closing in, forcing him closer to the figure. The broken teacups rattled, circling his boots as though unseen hands pushed them. The double stepped closer. Its grin widened until the skin tore, black fluid streaking down its chin. Its voice dropped lower, darker. You can't kill what you are. The traveler roared, slamming into it with all his weight. They crashed across the floor, shards of porcelain cutting into flesh. He clawed at its face, tearing skin from bone, but beneath was not blood, not bone, only mud, thick and foul. The double shrieked, its voice his own scream doubled, echoing from every corner. It clawed back, nails tearing at his chest, his arms. They grappled, rolling across the slick stone, locked in brutal mirror-image violence. "I am not you!" the traveler bellowed, smashing its head against the floor. The double's grin split wider, blood and mud spraying. Its hollow eyes rolled to meet his. "You will be!" The floor groaned. Roots surged through the cracks, wrapping them both. The double's body dissolved into muck, sliding across his skin, seeping into his wounds. And the god's voice thundered from below. "Feed! Become!" The traveler's scream echoed as the double's body dissolved into black sludge, burning cold against his skin. Roots coiled tighter, jerking him down. The floor split wide beneath him, a maw of muck and shadow. He plunged into the dark. The air thickened, pressing into his lungs. His ribs groaned, his vision blurred, yet he felt the descent not with his body but with his mind. Down, down, past the cellar, past stone and soil, past the endless bones buried deep. He landed hard on a surface that quivered beneath him. Flesh. The god's chamber spread vast and endless. Its walls pulsed with pale veins, its ceiling lost to shadow. The eye loomed above, larger than ever, filling the chamber with its moon-white glow. Faces pressed outward across its surface, their mouths open in soundless wails. Before him yawned the mouth. Its teeth jutted like jagged cliffs, its abyss spiraling into infinite black. Hot air blasted outward, thick with rot, rattling his bones. The god's limbs rose from the muck colossal, studded with faces that screamed without sound. They curled above him like towers, blotting out what little light remained. And the voice thundered, filling every corner of the chamber, every vein of his body. "You are mine!" The traveler staggered to his feet, swaying. His body was broken, his skin torn, his chest leaking blood. But his heart still thundered wrong, offbeat, wild. He lifted his head, meeting the gaze of the eye. "No!" he rasped, voice shredded but steady. "Not me!" the god roared. The chamber shook. Roots lashed across him, hurling him against the wall. His ribs cracked, his breath burst from his lungs. Still he stood again, defiant. The eye rolled closer, its glow flooding his vision until nothing else remained. The shadows within pressed harder, clawing to be free. "Feed! Stay! Become!" The mouth opened wide, the heat scorching, the abyss drawing him near. And the traveler screamed back with every shred of strength left in him. "I am not yours!" The chamber shuddered, cracks spidering across the walls. The eye flickered. The mouth groaned. For the first time, the god trembled. The chamber quaked as his scream tore through it, louder than it should have been, echoing like a blade drawn across stone. The walls rippled, the faces bulging and shrieking, the eye rolling wildly. The mouth clamped and opened in violent spasms, spewing black saliva across the floor. The god's roar thundered, but for the first time, it was not command. It was rage. Roots surged from every direction, lashing across his body, binding his limbs, pulling his chest tight until bones cracked. He screamed in agony but did not falter. His heart hammered wrong, refusing to yield, its rhythm sharp and jagged as a drum of war. With each beat, cracks spread wider across the chamber. The faces writhed, splitting apart. The eye flickered, its pale glow dimming as shadows clawed at its surface. The traveler staggered forward, dragging the roots with him. He planted his bleeding palms against the pulsing floor. "I am not yours," he hissed. "Not now. Not ever." His heart thundered again, wild and uneven. The chamber split with the sound, fissures tearing outward from where he stood. The walls shrieked, the faces dissolving into muck, the limbs thrashing in blind fury. The god roared, the force shaking the marrow of the world. "You are mine!" The traveler bellowed back, voice raw, torn, final. "I am my own!" And with that, his heart gave one last furious beat. The chamber shattered. The eye burst into blinding light, the mouth collapsed inward, the walls convulsed and tore apart. A tidal wave of pale brilliance engulfed him, hurling him upward, through the muck, through the stone, through the splintering house itself. He awoke sprawled on wet grass beneath the stars. The night air stung his skin, clean and cold. His chest heaved, each breath a knife, but it was his. Only his. Behind him, the house sagged. Its windows shattered, its roof collapsed, its porch splintered. It groaned once, a long, low sigh, then fell silent. The traveler staggered to his feet, bloodied and broken, but alive. He turned his back on the ruin, the forest at last within reach. He walked. The wind rose, carrying the scent of pine, the call of crickets, the chorus of life returning. But as he reached the tree-line, he thought he heard it, just faintly. From deep below, carried on the damp night air. Stay. He did not look back.